don't know what to do. Everything's gonna be okay, honey. I'm scared. I'm so sorry, but I really need you not to come. Not come? To my own daughter's wedding? Does the groom agree with excluding your own mother? It wasn't his choice. He's just trying to make you happy. I won't be able to come to the wedding, my dear. Thank you. I understand.
3 days before my only daughter's wedding, Claire sat across from me at my kitchen table, twisting a tissue between trembling fingers. "Mom," she whispered, "could you not come?" For a moment, I honestly thought I had misunderstood her. Then she explained that her future mother-in-law had threatened to walk out and take half the groom's family with her if I attended. "I just need to keep the peace," Claire said, tears filling her eyes. "Please, just this once." I stared at the daughter I had raised, protected, and spent months helping prepare for this wedding. Then I asked one question. "Does Nathan agree with this?" Claire looked down. That was my answer. So I smiled, even though something inside me was breaking. "All right, sweetheart," I said. "I won't come." The relief on her face hurt more than the request itself. But Claire had no idea what I had just agreed to. Before I tell you what happened next, if you've ever been expected to stay silent just to keep everyone else comfortable, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about family betrayal and finding the courage to stand up for yourself speak to you, please like the video and subscribe. I'm glad you're here. Long before the Caldwells entered our lives, my daughter and I had been the kind of family people described as close. Not perfect, never perfect, but close. For nearly 30 years, my husband Thomas and I ran Butler Event Design out of Richmond, Virginia. We started with almost nothing: one rented storefront, 2 second-hand refrigerators for flowers, a delivery van that rattled whenever Thomas drove faster than 50 miles an hour, and more optimism than common sense. In the beginning, I did almost everything myself. I designed bridal bouquets at 2 in the morning. I swept rose petals off church floors after midnight. I learned which caterers always arrived late, which photographers could calm a nervous bride, and which venues would suddenly discover an extra service fee the week before a wedding. Thomas handled the business side. He was quieter than I was, patient with numbers, and nearly impossible to intimidate. Whenever a vendor tried to slip something questionable into a contract, Thomas would tap the page with one finger and say, "Eva, people tell you who they are when money gets uncomfortable." At the time, I thought he was talking about business. Years later, I would realize he had been talking about people in general. We worked hard, but we were fortunate. The little flower shop grew into a full-service event company. By the time Claire entered high school, we were designing weddings at hotels, country clubs, historic estates, and corporate venues all over Central Virginia. We never became famous. That wasn't what we wanted. But within the Richmond wedding industry, people knew our name. And we did well. Well enough to pay off our house early. Well enough to send Claire to college without student loans. Well enough that when Thomas and I finally began talking seriously about retirement, we knew we would be comfortable. You probably wouldn't have guessed any of that from looking at me. I still drove a 6-year-old Subaru. I still clipped grocery coupons when they were worth clipping. I lived in the same brick colonial Thomas and I had bought when Claire was 9. The kitchen countertops were outdated according to Claire, and one of the cabinet doors needed a little lift before it would close properly. But it was home. Thomas had planted the maple tree outside the kitchen window. Claire had learned to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk out front. Every wall held a memory. I never saw a reason to replace a good life simply because I could afford something shinier. Thomas understood that. Maybe that was why losing him hurt so much. He died 6 years before Claire's wedding. A heart attack. Sudden. No long illness. No warning that would have allowed us to say the things people imagine they'll say when they know goodbye is coming. One Tuesday morning, he kissed me on the forehead before leaving for a meeting. By Thursday, I was choosing a suit for him to be buried in. Grief did strange things to time. For months, I would still turn toward his side of the bed when I woke up. I would hear something funny on the radio and reach for my phone before remembering there was nobody to call. I would walk into the office expecting to see him leaning over a contract with his reading glasses halfway down his nose. Claire became my anchor during that period. She was 30 then. She came by almost every evening for the first month, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes bringing nothing at all. We sat on the back porch and talked about her father. Or we didn't talk. There were nights when silence was enough. That was why I never questioned whether my daughter loved me. Even later, when things became painful, I held on to the memory of those evenings because I needed to understand something important. Claire was not a cruel person. She was a frightened person. There is a difference. And sometimes frightened people can do cruel things while telling themselves they are simply avoiding trouble. But I didn't understand that yet. When Claire first told me about Nathan Caldwell, she sounded lighter than she had in years. She had been working as a marketing director for a regional healthcare company when they met at a charity fundraiser. Nathan was a commercial real estate attorney. 39. Never married. Polite, confident, and steady in a way Claire found comforting. He actually listens, Mom, she told me after their third date. I laughed. At 36, you finally raised your standards. She threw a napkin at me. The first time Nathan came to dinner, I liked him. I truly did. He arrived carrying a bottle of wine and a box of pastries from a bakery Claire had once mentioned I loved. He asked about Thomas without making the conversation awkward. He complimented my cooking without overdoing it. And when Claire left the room to answer a phone call, he helped me clear the plates without being asked. Small things matter to me. Maybe that's old-fashioned, but they do. Before he left that evening, Nathan stood beside the front door and said, "Mrs. Butler, Claire talks about you constantly. I hope you know how important you are to her." I smiled. "Call me Eva." He did after that. For several months I thought my daughter had found a good man. I still believe Nathan was fundamentally decent. His problem wasn't cruelty. His problem was cowardice where his mother was concerned. But that came later. The first time I met Diane Caldwell was at a Sunday brunch at a restaurant near Short Pump. Nathan's father, Mark, came too. Mark was pleasant, understated, the sort of man who listened more than he spoke. Diane was different. Beautifully dressed. Perfect blonde gray bob. Pearl earrings. A handbag I recognized as costing more than the first delivery van Thomas and I had owned. Within 5 minutes I understood that Diane noticed everything people wore, drove, ordered, and mentioned. She smiled constantly, but there was something measuring behind that smile. "So Eva," she said after we ordered, "Claire tells me you're in flowers." I smiled politely. "Event design mostly. Flowers are part of it." "Oh, how creative." There was nothing wrong with the words. It was the tone. The same tone someone might use when hearing that you made candles in your garage. Nathan interrupted. "Mom, Eva owned one of the biggest independent event companies in Richmond." Diane blinked. "Owned, still owns parts of it," I said. "My manager runs most daily operations now. How wonderful." Again the smile. Again the little pause. Then she asked, "Do you still have to work much at your age?" Claire immediately looked uncomfortable. I wasn't offended. "Not yet. I don't have to," I said. "I like to stay involved." Diane nodded slowly. "I admire that. I don't know if I could still be dealing with flower deliveries and brides at 68. I took a sip of coffee. Neither Claire nor Nathan said anything. That was the first warning, small enough to ignore. And I did. Later, when Diane asked where I lived, I told her the neighborhood. She seemed surprised. "Oh, you've stayed there all these years." "Yes. How sentimental." I almost laughed. My house was worth more than 5 times what Thomas and I had paid for it, but I didn't bother mentioning that. Why would I? I wasn't interviewing for her approval. When brunch ended, Diane hugged Claire warmly and kissed Nathan on the cheek. She shook my hand. As we walked toward the parking lot, Claire touched my arm. She can be a little particular. I knew exactly what she meant. I also knew what she wanted from me. Permission not to worry. So I gave it to her. "She's fine," I said. Claire visibly relaxed. That moment seems small now. But looking back, I think that was the first brick in the wall we eventually built between us. Claire learned that if Diane behaved badly, I would smooth it over. And I learned that if I swallowed my discomfort, Claire would be relieved. Neither of us understood the price of that arrangement yet. 3 months later, Nathan proposed. Claire called me screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I cried before she did. The next evening they came to my house. Claire held out her left hand every 30 seconds, as if the ring might disappear if she stopped looking at it. Nathan seemed nervous. Not about marrying her, about something else. Eventually he cleared his throat. Our families should probably talk about the wedding. I smiled. Of course. Claire immediately said, "Nothing crazy, Mom. I mean it. Maybe 100 people. 120 maximum." That sounds sensible. I don't want some giant production. I laughed. You do remember what I did for a living, don't you? She grinned. Exactly. Which is why I know you could accidentally turn it into the royal wedding. Nathan smiled. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Speaking of weddings, your mother, Claire asked. He nodded. What does she want? I said. Nathan hesitated. She wants to know if we've discussed budget. Something in the way he said it caught my attention. Claire rolled her eyes affectionately. She started asking me about venues before I even told her what kind of dress I wanted. I laughed, but Nathan didn't. Then he said something I remembered much later. Mom gets invested in appearances. At the time I thought he meant she enjoyed beautiful weddings. I had met hundreds of mothers like that. Excited, opinionated, occasionally exhausting, nothing I couldn't handle. Then Nathan looked at Claire and added quietly, "Just don't let her make this into something you don't want." Claire leaned against him. She won't. I believed her. A week later, Diane invited the three of us to dinner. She arrived with a leather notebook. Before appetizers were served, she opened it. At the top of the first page, she had written, Caldwell Butler Wedding. Underneath were columns: venue, guest count, catering, flowers, entertainment, photography, transportation. I stared at the notebook. Claire laughed nervously. Diane, we haven't even picked a date. Exactly, Diane said. The best places book early. Then she looked directly at me. And since Eva has experience with these things, I'm sure she'll be invaluable. I'll help however Claire wants. Diane smiled. Wonderful. Then she tapped her pen against the page. So perhaps we should begin with the awkward question. Claire frowned. What awkward question? Diane's eyes stayed on me. Who is paying for what? Something about the question itself didn't bother me. Weddings were expensive. Adults needed to discuss money. But there was something in Diane's expression that did. Not curiosity, calculation. And for the first time since Claire announced her engagement, I felt a small tightening in my stomach. Thomas's voice came back to me as clearly as if he were sitting beside me. People tell you who they are when money gets uncomfortable. I wish I had listened more carefully. Because that dinner was the moment the wedding stopped being only about my daughter getting married. It became something else, something none of us understood yet. And Diane Caldwell had already begun keeping score. The first serious wedding planning meeting happened at my house 2 Sundays later. Claire arrived carrying a 3-ring binder she'd labeled Simple Wedding. That still makes me smile when I think about it. Inside were magazine clippings, venue printouts, fabric samples, and a handwritten guest list with exactly 118 names. She had highlighted 3 things at the top of the first page: warm, elegant, personal. That's what I want, she told me. I don't want people walking in and thinking, wow, this must have cost a fortune. I want them to walk in and feel like they know us. I loved that. It sounded like Claire. Nathan agreed. He wanted a ceremony somewhere with trees, a good dinner, a live band instead of a DJ, and enough time to actually talk to their guests. Nothing about it sounded unreasonable. The problem arrived 20 minutes later, wearing cream-colored trousers and carrying a folder twice as thick as Claire's. Diane. Mark followed behind her with a bottle of wine. Don't look at me, he said quietly as I let them in. I'm just transportation. I laughed. Diane did not. She went straight to the dining table and began unpacking. She had printed photographs of 3 venues Claire hadn't mentioned, all of them expensive. One was a restored estate outside Richmond, with formal gardens, a ballroom, and a stone terrace overlooking the James River. Another was a private club where Nathan's family had attended charity events for years. The third was a luxury hotel downtown. Claire looked at the pictures. These are beautiful, but they're not really what we were thinking. Diane waved a hand. I know, sweetheart. That's why I brought options. Claire glanced at me. I could already see what was happening. In the event business, I'd watched this scene unfold 100 times. A bride begins with a wedding she actually wants. Then someone with a louder voice starts improving it. More guests, more flowers, more courses. A bigger room because the guest list expanded. A more expensive photographer because someone knows someone. A second dress. Specialty linens. A champagne tower nobody asked for. Each edition seems manageable on its own. Then somewhere around the 10th edition, the wedding no longer belongs to the couple. It belongs to expectations. I didn't want that for Claire, so I asked her directly, "What venue did you like?" She opened her binder and showed me a historic property in Goochland County. It had an old brick manor, a small garden, and a reception barn, renovated with exposed beams and large windows. I knew it well. Beautiful place, excellent staff, reasonable policies. Most importantly, it could comfortably handle 120 guests. Diane leaned toward the photograph. Oh, one syllable. But I knew that oh. I'd heard it from wealthy clients when someone suggested a perfectly lovely option that didn't sound expensive enough. Nathan noticed too. What's wrong with it? Nothing, Diane said quickly. It's charming. Claire smiled. I love it. I'm sure you do. It's very relaxed. I looked down at my coffee to hide my expression. Claire began talking about an outdoor ceremony under an oak tree, and I watched Diane's face. She wasn't listening. She was calculating. Finally, she asked, "How many does the ballroom hold?" There isn't really a ballroom, Claire said. The reception would be in the renovated barn. Diane blinked. A barn? It doesn't look like a barn. If we have rain, they close the side doors. And parking plenty. And valet. Claire hesitated. I don't know. Diane turned to Nathan. You're inviting partners from the firm, aren't you? Maybe a few. And your father has clients. Mark looked up. I don't need clients at my son's wedding. Diane ignored him. Then she reached into her folder and pulled out a spreadsheet. I did a preliminary guest list for our side. Nathan stared at it. How many people? Only 96. Claire sat up straighter. 96. That's not excessive. We were planning 120 total. Well, obviously that was before we really thought about it. I watched Claire's shoulders tighten. Nathan rubbed his forehead. Mom. What, we're not inviting 100 people from our side? Why not? Because I don't know half these people. You know them. I recognize some names. Diane looked genuinely offended. These people have watched you grow up. Nathan gave a humorless laugh. Mom. I haven't seen the Whitcombs since I was 14. They sent you a graduation gift, 21 years ago. Mark chuckled into his coffee. Diane shot him a look. The meeting might have remained merely annoying if money hadn't entered the conversation. But money always enters eventually. Claire cleared her throat. We also need to talk budget. Yes, I said, before we start falling in love with things. I had already decided what I wanted to give. Thomas and I had once talked about Claire's wedding, though we never set aside a formal fund. After he died, I decided that if she ever married, I would give her $25,000. Not because I thought a wedding needed to cost that much. Because I wanted to give her something generous without compromising my own future. So I told them, I'd like to contribute $25,000. Claire's eyes immediately filled. Mom, it's a gift. You don't have to use all of it on the wedding. If you spend 15 and save 10, I'd be thrilled. She came around the table and hugged me. Dad would have loved this. Yes, I said softly. He would. For one brief moment, everything felt right again. Then Diane spoke. That's very generous. I turned toward her. She was smiling, but her eyes had moved back to the spreadsheet. We'll certainly handle our share, she said. Nathan asked, what does that mean? Diane seemed surprised by the question. It means your father and I aren't going to let Claire's mother carry the wedding. Mark looked at her. I noticed. Just a glance. But it lasted a second too long. How much were you thinking? Nathan asked. Diane reached for her wine. We don't need to get vulgar about exact figures tonight. I almost smiled. That was new. She had been the one who wanted to discuss who was paying for what. Now exact numbers were vulgar. Claire, eager to avoid awkwardness, jumped in. "We don't have to decide everything right now," no, Diane said. "But we should establish the principle. Eva is contributing, and will take care of our side." Our side. Those two words would become very important later. At the time, they sounded simple, reasonable even. We moved on. For the next 2 weeks, Claire and Nathan toured venues. Diane accompanied them to all three. By the third visit, the charming Goochland property had disappeared from consideration. Claire called me one evening. We picked the James River estate. I paused. "The one Diane brought, yes. Do you love it?" A tiny pause. "It's beautiful." "That isn't what I asked." She laughed, but I could hear strain in it. "Mom, I do like it. And Nathan likes it. Diane says it makes more sense with the guest count." "What guest count?" "Probably around 180. 180. We're still working on it." I sat down at my kitchen table. 2 weeks. They had gone from 120 guests to 180. Claire. I know. What happened to simple? It can still be simple. Simple for 180 people. She sighed. "Mom, please don't start." I went quiet. There it was. The first warning that even asking questions might be treated as creating conflict. So I softened my voice. "I'm not starting anything. I just want to make sure this is still your wedding." "It is." I wanted to believe her. The venue deposit was due 3 days later. Claire called me from work in a panic because the estate would not hold the date without a signed contract and $12,000 deposit. Nathan was in court. Diane was between accounts, as Claire put it. Could I put the deposit through Butler Event Design and let everyone settle up later? That was not unusual in my world. My company had long relationships with local venues. And because I trusted my daughter completely, I said yes. "Just make sure everyone understands this comes out of the wedding budget until we're reimbursed." Of course. I paid it. That was the first advance. Then came the florist. Claire had originally wanted seasonal white and blush flowers with greenery. Elegant. Simple. About $6,000. Diane attended the floral consultation. By the end, she wanted orchids added to the centerpieces. Then taller arrangements for half the tables. Then a floral installation over the dance floor. Then additional arrangements along the staircase because, according to Diane, guests will photograph that entrance constantly. The floral estimate climbed to nearly $11,000. Claire called me again. "Diane says she'll cover the upgrades." Did she say that clearly? Yes. All right. Because the florist was one of my oldest industry contacts, the deposit again went through my business account. Then came lighting. The venue already had warm architectural lighting. Diane wanted custom uplighting pin spots over every centerpiece, monogram projection, and exterior illumination for the terrace. Another several $1,000s. She said the Caldwells will pay for that, Claire told me. Then transportation. A shuttle had originally been planned for hotel guests. Diane wanted luxury cars for the bridal party and family. They'll cover it. The rehearsal dinner expanded from 30 people to 65. They're paying. A second cocktail station appeared. Diane's request. An upgraded champagne package. Diane's request. Custom printed menus. Diane's request. Chair rentals because she disliked the venue's standard chairs. Diane's request. Each time I heard the same phrase. The Caldwells will cover it. And each time because I had vendor relationships and could secure better terms. Claire asked me to help get the arrangement started. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself all families settle wedding expenses differently. I told myself Diane had been perfectly clear that she intended to pay for the additions she requested. But by the time the wedding was 4 months away, I opened the event file one morning and stared at the running total. My original commitment was $25,000. The amount currently connected to my company account was already well above that. Some were deposits, some were guarantees. Some would eventually be shifted to final invoices. But there was one thing I could no longer ignore. Not a single reimbursement from Diane had appeared. That evening I called Claire. "Sweetheart, have the Caldwells mentioned when they plan to settle their portion?" There was silence. Then she said, "Diane told me not to worry about it." That wasn't my question. I know. Has she given you a number? Another silence. No. I looked at the paperwork spread across my desk. Then we need one. Claire exhaled. Mom, can we not make money weird? Money wasn't becoming weird. Money was already weird. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. Before we hung up, Claire said something that would keep me awake that night. Diane said families like theirs don't nickel and dime each other over weddings. I stared at the dark window above my desk. Families like theirs. I almost asked Claire what exactly that meant. Instead, I said goodnight. Then I opened the accounting folder again. Thomas's voice came back to me. People tell you who they are when money gets uncomfortable. For the first time, I wondered if Diane had ever intended to pay what she was promising. And if she hadn't, I wondered who she expected would. Deep down, I think I already knew. By the time the wedding was 3 months away, Diane no longer bothered hiding what she thought of me. At first, the insults had been dressed up as concern. Little comments about whether I would be comfortable at certain events. Suggestions that some of Nathan's family might not understand my business background. Questions about whether I owned a formal gown appropriate for the rehearsal dinner. Nothing dramatic enough to confront without looking oversensitive. That was what made it effective. A person can do a surprising amount of damage while smiling. The bridal shower was where I finally understood that Diane wasn't simply particular. She was deliberately placing me beneath her. Claire's bridesmaids had planned the shower at a private dining room in a hotel near downtown Richmond. I arrived early because Claire had asked me to help check the floral arrangements. The room looked lovely. Soft pink roses, white hydrangeas, small glass candles. Exactly the kind of arrangement Claire had originally wanted for the wedding, before everything became bigger and more expensive. I was adjusting one centerpiece when Diane entered with 2 women I didn't recognize. She was wearing a pale blue dress and carrying herself as though she were entering a room already waiting for her. Eva, she said brightly, you're working already. I looked at the vase in my hands, just straightening one arrangement. She laughed lightly. I don't think you know how not to work. One of the women smiled. Diane turned toward them. This is Claire's mother. She used to work in flowers. For almost 30 years, Thomas and I had employed 23 people at our busiest point. We had designed events for corporations, universities, political fundraisers, weddings, galas, and private families all over Virginia. But Diane reduced my life's work to something that sounded like I had spent weekends tying ribbons around carnations. I could have corrected her. Instead, I put the vase down and said, "It's nice to meet you." One of the women asked, "Did you have a flower shop?" I owned an event design company. Oh, she said. How interesting. Diane smiled as though she hadn't heard me. Then she moved on. It shouldn't have bothered me. I had spent enough years in business to know that other people's opinions did not change my accomplishments. But this wasn't a stranger at a cocktail party. This was the woman whose family my daughter was joining. And Claire was 10 feet away. She heard it. I know she did because our eyes met. For half a second I waited for her to say something. Anything. She still owns it. She built it with Dad. Actually, Mom ran the whole company. Instead, Claire smiled nervously and turned back toward one of her bridesmaids. That hurt more than Diane's comment. The shower continued. I told myself not to let one sentence ruin the day. I laughed when Claire opened gifts. I helped collect ribbons. I took pictures. I refilled coffee for an elderly aunt who couldn't find the server. I did what mothers do. Then came the group photographs. The photographer called for Claire with her bridesmaids, then Claire with Nathan's sisters and cousins, then Claire with Diane. Then Diane called out, "Let's get one with all the Caldwell women." I stood near the edge of the room and watched 6 women gather around my daughter. Claire was marrying into the Caldwell family, so I understood the photograph. What I didn't understand was why Diane looked directly at me before asking the photographer to take another. "And one more without handbags, please. This one should be elegant." I felt Rachel's hand touch my elbow. She had come to the shower because Claire considered her an honorary aunt. "You all right?" she whispered. "Fine. Eva." I said I'm fine. Rachel had known me too long to believe me. A few minutes later, the photographer finally said, "Can we get the bride with her mother?" Before I could move, Diane interrupted. "Actually, we're running behind. Could we do family combinations after dessert?" The photographer looked confused. Claire said, "Sure." After dessert, nobody remembered. Or perhaps somebody did. I never got that picture. On the drive home, I told myself it didn't matter. There would be hundreds of photographs at the wedding. But deep down, I knew it did matter. Not because I needed a picture. Because somebody was teaching me where I was expected to stand. And I was allowing it. A week later, Claire came to my house with another problem. "Don't be mad." Those 3 words never bring good news. I was in the kitchen making tea. "What happened?" She placed her purse on the counter. "Diane thinks the mothers should coordinate their dresses. That sounds reasonable. She found a color she loves." And Claire hesitated. "She thinks the navy dress you bought might photograph too dark." I stared at her. The navy dress had been Claire's choice. We had spent an entire Saturday shopping for it. She had cried when she saw me wearing it. "Mom, you look beautiful," she had said. I remembered those exact words. "What color does Diane want? Champagne?" I laughed before I could stop myself. "Champagne? She says it fits the palette better." "Claire, the bridesmaids are wearing champagne." "I know. So you want the mother of the bride dressed like a bridesmaid?" "No, not exactly." I folded my arms. "What is this really about?" Claire looked exhausted. "She thinks navy is too heavy." "Does she, Mom?" There it was again. That tone. Not angry, pleading. "Please don't make this harder." I turned away and poured hot water over the tea bag. "How much did your mother-in-law's dress cost?" I asked. Claire frowned. "I don't know. Doesn't matter." "What does that have to do with anything?" "Nothing. I'm just trying to understand why she gets to choose hers and mine." Claire rubbed her forehead. "She doesn't get to choose yours. She just did. She's making a suggestion. And you're delivering it." Claire went silent. I hated the tension between us. That was the problem. Every time Diane pushed, I worried less about Diane than about losing peace with my daughter. So once again, I gave way. "I'll exchange the dress." Claire's shoulders dropped immediately. "Thank you." She came around the island and kissed my cheek. "You're the best." I smiled. But after she left, I stood in my bedroom looking at that navy dress hanging from the closet door. I didn't feel like the best. I felt small. The next incident happened at a tasting dinner at the venue. The caterer had prepared sample courses for the families. We were seated around a long table with Claire, Nathan, Mark, Diane, and 2 members of the venue staff. The conversation was pleasant until Diane began talking about wedding day logistics. "We should probably keep the family staging rooms separate," she said. The coordinator nodded. "Of course. We have a bridal suite and 2 smaller rooms. Perfect. Nathan's family will use the larger downstairs room." Claire looked up. "What about Mom?" Diane barely paused. "Oh, Eva might be more comfortable in the smaller room near the service hallway." I actually thought I had misheard her. "The service hallway," Diane smiled at me. "It's quieter. And since you know vendors, you'll probably be in and out anyway." The venue coordinator looked horrified. "I think the mother of the bride would normally be with the bridal party." "Yes," I said. "Normally." Claire shifted in her chair. Nathan looked at his plate. That detail stayed with me. He looked at his plate. He heard his mother suggest putting me near the service entrance at my own daughter's wedding, and he studied his dinner. Diane continued as though nothing had happened. "I just think everyone will be less crowded." Mark finally said Eva should be wherever Claire wants her. The table went quiet. Diane gave him a thin smile. "Of course." I looked at Claire. "What do you want?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she said, "We'll figure it out later." Later. That word became Claire's refuge. We would discuss the dress later, the guest list later, the finances later, Diane's comments later. Anything uncomfortable could be postponed until everyone was too tired to confront it. On the drive home, Claire called me. I answered through the car speaker. "Hey, sweetheart, are you upset?" "What do you think?" Silence. "Mom, Diane can be difficult." "I know." She doesn't mean half of what she says. Then why does everyone behave as though she does? Claire didn't answer. I slowed at a red light. Claire, do you realize you've asked me to change my dress, accepted being excluded from photographs, and now you're considering putting me beside a service hallway because Diane might prefer it? That isn't what happened. It is exactly what happened. Please don't exaggerate. That sentence cut through me. I tightened my hands around the steering wheel. I am not exaggerating. I just need everyone to get through the next few months without fighting. I'm not fighting with anyone. I know. That's why I'm asking you. I went quiet. What does that mean? Claire sighed. It means you're reasonable. At the time, she meant it as a compliment. I heard it as one too, for a little while. Then I began thinking about it differently. Diane could make demands because Diane created consequences. She could sulk, threaten, withdraw, embarrass people, make a scene. And because I did none of those things, Claire expected me to absorb whatever Diane caused. I was the reasonable one, so I was the one who had to bend. A few nights later, Rachel stopped by my house with paperwork from the company. We sat at the kitchen table. She studied me for maybe 30 seconds before saying, "What's going on?" "Nothing." "You've read the same invoice 3 times. I put it down. Then I told her everything. The shower, the dress, the service hallway. Rachel listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You know what worries me, that Diane is rude." "No." She leaned back. "That Claire is getting used to asking you to disappear in pieces." I stared at her. The words made my stomach tighten. "She isn't doing that." Rachel didn't argue. She simply said, "Maybe not intentionally." That was worse, because I knew she was right. Nobody had asked me to miss the wedding. Not yet. But little by little I was already being moved away from it. Out of the photographs, out of the decisions, out of the room. And every time I stepped aside, Claire seemed grateful. I wish I could say that was the moment I finally stopped. It wasn't. I loved my daughter. And I still believed keeping quiet was the price of protecting her happiness. So I kept swallowing the hurt. What I didn't know was that Diane wasn't finished testing how far I could be pushed. And at the rehearsal dinner, she would finally push hard enough that something hidden beneath all that wedding elegance began to show. Something involving money. And once I saw it, I could no longer pretend this was only about a difficult mother-in-law. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be the easy part. That was what Claire told me the morning of the wedding rehearsal. No speeches longer than 5 minutes, no surprise performances, no drama, she said over the phone. Just dinner. I remember laughing. Whenever someone says no drama, drama usually hears its name. Claire groaned. "Please don't say that. I'm teasing." "I know. I'm just tired." I could hear it in her voice. The wedding was 48 hours away, and instead of sounding excited, my daughter sounded like someone trying to prevent a building from collapsing. I wanted to tell her to forget the seating charts, forget Diane, forget whether the napkins matched the flowers. I wanted to remind her what mattered. But by then, every conversation about the wedding seemed to have invisible wires attached to it. Pull the wrong one and something exploded. So I simply said, "I'll see you tonight." The rehearsal itself went smoothly. The ceremony coordinator walked everyone through where to stand, when to move, and how slowly Claire should walk down the aisle. For a few minutes, I allowed myself to enjoy it. I stood beneath the oak trees and watched my daughter practicing the moment she would marry. The late afternoon light caught her hair. Nathan smiled when she reached him. For one beautiful second, Diane disappeared from my thoughts. So did the invoices. So did the dresses and photographs and little humiliations. I thought of Thomas. He should have been there. He should have been standing beside me, pretending not to cry. I whispered, "You'd be proud of her." Then the coordinator called for another run-through. Reality returned. The rehearsal dinner was being held at a private dining room in an upscale restaurant overlooking the river. Diane had originally told us it would be intimate. 30 guests, immediate family wedding party, and a few close friends. By the time we arrived, there were 63 place settings. I knew because I counted. Old habits. When you spend decades organizing events, your eyes automatically notice chairs, tables, exits, staff placement, and whether the room has enough glasses. I also noticed something else. My place card was at the far end of the room. Claire and Nathan sat at the center of the main table. Diane and Mark were beside them. Nathan's sister and her husband were nearby. The best man. The maid of honor. Then several Caldwell relatives. My seat was 3 tables away, beside a cousin of Mark's I had met once, and an elderly woman from Diane's garden club. I stood there holding my purse and looking at the card. Eva Butler. There was no mistake. Rachel had been invited because Claire considered her practically family, and she found me before I sat down. "Where did they put you?" I pointed. She stared. "You're joking. It's only dinner. Eva, please." She lowered her voice. "That is the mother of the bride's seat, apparently. You should say something. To whom, Claire?" I looked toward the center table. Claire was speaking to a bridesmaid, while Diane directed a waiter to move 2 wine glasses. My daughter looked exhausted. "I'm not doing this tonight." Rachel studied me. "You keep saying that. Saying what? Not tonight, not now, after the wedding, later." I felt myself stiffen. "I'm here for Claire, I know." "Then let me be here for her." Rachel said nothing more. I sat down. Dinner began pleasantly enough. The elderly woman beside me was charming and spent 20 minutes telling me about her grandchildren. I almost relaxed. Then just after the first course was cleared, a young man in a dark suit entered the room and looked around. I recognized him immediately. His name was Kevin Harris, assistant events manager at the wedding venue. We had worked together before. He spotted me and walked over. "Ms. Butler." "Hi, Kevin. Sorry to interrupt your dinner." Something in his expression told me this was business. "What is it?" He leaned closer. "There's a balance issue with tomorrow's setup." I frowned. Tomorrow. The rehearsal dinner was Friday. The wedding was Saturday. "Yes, ma'am. The added lounge furniture and exterior lighting package." I lowered my voice. "What balance? The supplemental invoice. How much?" He glanced toward the room. "Just over 8,000. My stomach tightened. I thought that was being billed directly to Mrs. Caldwell. That's what we understood initially. Initially, he shifted uncomfortably. "We received an email last week asking us to keep everything under the Butler Event Design Master account." I stared at him. "From whom?" Before he could answer, Diane's voice came from behind us. "Is there a problem?" Kevin straightened. Diane had apparently left the main table without my noticing. Her smile was pleasant, but her eyes moved rapidly between us. "Nothing we can't handle," I said. Kevin looked relieved. "I can follow up Monday if you prefer." "The wedding is tomorrow," I said. "Monday would be a little late." Diane laughed. "Eva, surely we don't need to discuss invoices at dinner." Kevin looked at me. I could see he wanted to disappear. I didn't blame him. "Send the details to Rachel and me tonight," I said. "Absolutely." Diane's smile tightened. "I'm sure this is just an accounting mix-up." "Probably." Kevin nodded and left. I turned back toward my table. Diane followed. "Eva." "Yes. Could I speak with you?" "We're speaking." Her jaw tightened. "Privately." We walked toward a quiet corner near the windows. Outside, the river reflected the last orange streaks of sunset. Inside, Diane lowered her voice. "I wish you wouldn't discuss financial matters in front of guests." I didn't. A venue manager approached me. "You could have told him to call later. I was asking about tomorrow. It was still unnecessary." I looked at her carefully. "Did you ask the venue to put the exterior lighting and lounge furniture on my company account?" Her expression barely changed. "I asked them to streamline the billing." "That isn't what I asked." She gave me the same smile she had been giving me for months. "Eva, this is exactly the sort of thing I was hoping we could avoid during the wedding weekend." "What sort of thing?" "Making everyone uncomfortable over money." I almost laughed. "Diane, $8,000 isn't a misunderstanding over a dinner check." She glanced toward the tables. "Please lower your voice." My voice is lowered. "We said we would handle our side." "Yes. So trust that we will." "Then why did you instruct them to bill my account?" "I didn't instruct them to bill you personally. You instructed them to use my company account. It's temporary. That decision wasn't yours to make." Her eyes hardened for a second. Then footsteps approached. Claire. What's going on? Nothing, Diane said immediately. I turned toward my daughter. There's an unpaid balance connected to an upgrade Diane ordered. Diane exhaled sharply. There. That's exactly what I mean. Claire looked from one of us to the other. What the venue says, someone asked them to put the balance under Butler Event Design. Claire frowned. Didn't we already talk about that? No. Yes, we did. I thought the Caldwells were covering the upgrades. So did I. Diane folded her arms. And we are. Then this should be simple, I said. Have them invoice you directly. The silence lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but it felt much longer. Diane looked at Claire. Not at me. At Claire. Do you see what I've been dealing with? My mouth actually fell open. Claire looked alarmed. Diane. I have tried very hard not to say anything. Diane continued, still quiet enough that only a few nearby guests could hear. But every step of this wedding becomes a financial discussion with your mother. I stared at her. Because my account keeps getting used. You volunteered to help. I volunteered $25,000. A few people turned. Nathan looked up from the main table. Diane's face changed. For the first time, I saw genuine fear beneath the irritation. It disappeared quickly, but I saw it. She stepped closer. This is neither the time nor the place. You're right. I reached for my purse. Tomorrow morning, Rachel can move every charge you approved onto the correct billing information. Diane's voice became sharper. Eva, don't create a crisis 2 days before your daughter's wedding. I'm not creating anything, Claire whispered. Mom, please. There it was again. Please. Always directed at me, never at Diane. I looked at my daughter. I'm not making a scene. Diane gave a short laugh. You're standing in the middle of my son's rehearsal dinner discussing money. Your son's rehearsal dinner. The words came out before I could stop them. Claire closed her eyes. Mom. I took a breath. I wasn't going to do this. Not there. Not in front of Claire. So I nodded. You're right. Enough. I returned to my seat. But the room had changed. People pretended not to look at me. Rachel leaned toward me. What happened later? For the rest of dinner, Diane behaved as though nothing had occurred. She toasted Claire. She praised Nathan. She thanked the restaurant staff. She told a story about Nathan as a boy that made everyone laugh. I watched her and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Understanding. Diane was frightened whenever money became specific. Promises were easy for her. Numbers were not. After dessert, I went to the restroom. When I returned, I heard Diane speaking in the hallway. I stopped before turning the corner. Claire was with her. Diane's voice was strained. I simply cannot spend tomorrow being publicly challenged by your mother. She wasn't challenging you. Claire, you saw what happened. She asked about an invoice. At my son's rehearsal dinner. Diane, I have done everything possible to welcome her, but she clearly resents this family. I almost walked around the corner. Then I heard Claire say very softly, she doesn't resent you. She embarrassed me intentionally. No. If she behaves like that tomorrow, I won't stay. Silence. My heart began pounding. Claire whispered, what do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. Diane, you can't leave the wedding. I won't sit there while she humiliates me. She isn't going to humiliate you. You don't know that. Another silence. Then Diane delivered the threat. And if I leave, don't expect Nathan's aunts, his sister, or several of our close family friends to stay either. I felt sick. Not because I believed all those people would actually leave, because Diane knew exactly what Claire feared most. Public conflict, embarrassment, a wedding falling apart in front of everyone, and she was using that fear. I stepped backward before they could see me. By the time I returned to the dining room, I knew something had changed. This was no longer a difficult woman making rude comments. Diane was issuing ultimatums, and Claire was terrified of her. The dinner ended shortly after 10. I was home by 10:30. At 11:07, my phone rang. Claire. I answered immediately. Sweetheart. She was crying. Mom. I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes. What happened? She told me what I already knew. Diane had threatened not to attend. She told me about the relatives Diane said would leave with her. She told me Nathan was furious but didn't believe his mother really meant it. Then Claire said the sentence I had been afraid to hear. I just need everybody to get through Saturday. I sat alone in my kitchen. Everybody. You know what I mean? I don't think I do. She cried harder. Mom, she thinks you embarrassed her. I asked why a bill she ordered was being sent to my company. I know. Then why are we discussing my behavior? I'm not saying you did anything wrong. But there was always a but. Claire took a shaky breath. I can't lose half of Nathan's family 2 days before my wedding. I looked through the kitchen window at the maple tree Thomas had planted decades earlier. For months I had changed clothes, changed seats, ignored insults, advanced money, and stayed quiet. Every sacrifice had been made in the name of peace. And somehow the peace kept requiring more. Claire, I said softly, what exactly are you asking me to do? She didn't answer. Not that night. Instead, she said she needed to sleep. She told me she loved me. I told her I loved her too. After we hung up, I stayed at the kitchen table for a long time. The house was silent. Then I opened my laptop and checked my company email. Kevin had already sent the paperwork. I opened the newest invoice. At the bottom was a note, authorization confirmed per client representative. Underneath it was an email address, Diane's. I stared at the screen. For months I had believed we were dealing with entitlement. Now I began to suspect something else. Diane hadn't simply expected me to pay. She had started acting as though she had the authority to make me pay. And less than 24 hours later, my daughter would come to my house and ask me to disappear from her wedding completely. Claire arrived at my house the next afternoon without calling first. I knew something was wrong before she even came through the door. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair, usually smooth and carefully styled, was pulled into a loose knot at the back of her head. She was still wearing the blouse she had worn to a final vendor meeting that morning, but one side had come untucked. For a woman getting married the next day, she did not look excited. She looked cornered. I opened the door wider. Come in. She stepped inside and immediately wrapped her arms around me. That frightened me more than if she had started shouting. I held her for a few seconds. Then I said, "What happened? Can we sit down?" We went into the kitchen. That kitchen had seen every important conversation of Claire's life. Homework meltdowns, college acceptance letters, her first breakup, her father's funeral arrangements, the night she told me she had met Nathan. Now she sat at the same oak table Thomas and I had bought 25 years earlier, twisting a tissue between her fingers. I made coffee because I needed something to do with my hands. Claire didn't touch hers. For a while neither of us spoke. Finally she said, "Diane is still saying she won't come." I sat across from her. "And Nathan? He's angry. With her? With everything." That answer told me enough. Has he told his mother she's wrong? Claire looked down. He told her she was overreacting. That isn't what I asked. Mom, has he told her that threatening to abandon his wedding because I asked about an invoice is unacceptable? Claire closed her eyes. He doesn't know how to deal with her when she gets like this. I almost said neither do you, but I stopped myself. This was not the moment for cruelty. What exactly is she demanding? Claire picked at the corner of the tissue. She says she wants assurances. What kind? That there won't be tension tomorrow. There won't be tension from me. I told her that. And she says she doesn't believe it. I leaned back. So now I am responsible for something I haven't done. Claire's mouth trembled. I know how it sounds. Do you? She looked at me then. The exhaustion in her face softened my anger. I had spent 36 years reading that face. I knew when Claire was angry. I knew when she was lying. I knew when she wanted something, but was afraid to ask. And now I knew exactly what was coming. Still, I made her say it. "Why are you here, sweetheart?" Her eyes filled. "Mom, say it." She stared at the tissue. Then barely above a whisper she said, "Could you not come tomorrow?" For several seconds I heard nothing. Not the refrigerator humming, not the traffic outside, not even my own breathing. My only daughter had just asked me to miss her wedding. I thought about the dress hanging in my closet, the champagne-colored one I had bought after returning the navy dress Claire had loved. I thought about the earrings Thomas had given me on our 25th anniversary, which I had planned to wear. I thought about the small photograph of Thomas I had tucked into my evening bag so I could carry a piece of him with me. I thought about all the times Claire had said I wish Dad could see me get married, and all the times I had answered, I'll be there for both of us. Now I would be there for neither. I folded my hands on the table. Why Claire immediately started crying. She says if you're there, she'll feel humiliated. Humiliated by what, the rehearsal dinner, the invoices, everything. Claire. I did not humiliate her. I know. Then why am I the one being removed? I'm not removing you. I stared at her. What would you call this? She pressed the tissue to her mouth. I'm asking you to help me. That sentence hurt in a different way. By disappearing, no. That is exactly what you are asking. Just for the ceremony and reception. I almost laughed. Just the ceremony and reception. As though there were another wedding somewhere I could attend. Claire reached across the table. Please understand. Diane says if she leaves, Nathan's sister may leave. His aunt too. Maybe his cousins. And then Nathan is going to spend the whole day angry and everyone will know something happened and I just... She stopped. What, I can't do this. I watched my daughter fall apart over a crisis someone else had manufactured. Part of me wanted to pull her into my arms and promise to fix everything. That instinct was almost automatic. I had been fixing things for Claire since she was a child. Forgotten lunch, Mom brought it. Broken school project, Mom found the glue gun. College housing problem, Mom made the calls. Broken heart. Mom sat on the couch with ice cream. Wedding vendors, Mom knew somebody. Unpaid deposits, Mom advanced the money. Difficult mother-in-law, Mom stayed quiet. And now the solution was apparently the same. Mom would fix it, by not being there. Claire took a shaky breath. You're the only person I can ask. I looked at her. Why? Because you love me. There are words that sound beautiful until you hear how they are being used. She continued quickly. You know I don't mean it like that. I just mean, you're stronger than she is. I said nothing. You're reasonable. There was that word again. You're not going to make a scene. You're not going to punish me. You understand how much pressure I'm under. I felt something inside me shift. Not break. Settle. For months, Claire had used my love as evidence that I should absorb one more insult. Now she was saying it directly. She believed I was the safest person to hurt. Because I would stay. Because I would forgive. Because I would not threaten consequences. Claire. I said, listen carefully to what you just told me. She frowned. You said I am the only person you can ask because I am the one who loves you enough not to punish you. That's not what I meant. It is. No. It is exactly what you meant. Her tears fell faster. Mom, please. I kept my voice calm. I'm not angry with you for being afraid. She looked at me. But I need you to understand what fear is making you do. I just want tomorrow to be peaceful. I studied her face. Then I asked the question that mattered most. If I stay home tomorrow, will you actually be happy? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Claire. Her eyes dropped. At least nobody will fight. And there it was, the truth. She was not choosing happiness. She was choosing the person who had made the biggest threat. I felt a deep sadness then, not only for myself, for Claire, for the marriage she was about to enter if this was how she solved conflict, for Nathan who had learned the same habit with his mother, for all of us. I reached across the table and covered Claire's hand with mine. She looked up hopefully. All right, sweetheart. Her face froze. What? I won't come. For a second she simply stared at me. Then her entire body sagged with relief. Not joy. Relief. She stood so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. Oh, Mom. She came around the table and hugged me. Thank you. Thank you. I knew you'd understand. I put my arms around her, but I did not close my eyes. I looked past her shoulder toward the living room. Thomas's photograph sat on the bookshelf. He was smiling in it. The picture had been taken on our 30th anniversary. For some reason, I found myself wondering what he would say if he were sitting at that kitchen table. Would he tell me to go anyway? Would he tell Claire she was wrong? Would he ask Nathan to grow a spine? I knew one thing. He would not have called this peace. Claire pulled away. I promise I'll make it up to you. I smiled faintly. This is not something you make up with brunch. Her face fell. I know. Do you? She swallowed. I think so. I didn't argue. She picked up her purse. At the doorway, she turned back. I love you. I love you too. That part was still true. Maybe that was what made everything so painful. She left. I watched from the window as she got into her car and drove away. Then I stood alone in the kitchen. For almost a minute, I felt nothing. Then the first tear came. I sat down before my knees gave way. I had cried after Thomas died. I had cried at Claire's college graduation. I had cried when she showed me her engagement ring. But this was different. This was the grief of being alive and deliberately excluded from someone you loved. I pressed both hands over my face. I did everything I could, I whispered. The room gave me no answer. Eventually, I walked into the living room and picked up Thomas's photograph. You would have hated this, I said. In the photograph, he kept smiling. I sat on the couch and let myself cry until there was nothing graceful about it. Then slowly, another feeling began replacing the grief. Clarity. Claire had asked me not to attend. I had agreed. And for the first time in months, I decided I was going to take that request seriously. Completely seriously. No ceremony, no reception, no last-minute vendor emergencies, no phone calls from staff asking where the extra chairs belonged, no florist asking whether Diane had approved another centerpiece, no venue manager asking me to guarantee a charge. If I was not part of the wedding, then perhaps I needed to stop functioning as though I were responsible for holding it together. That thought made me sit very still. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't going to cancel flowers or ruin dinner or embarrass my daughter. I would never do that. But there is a difference between destroying something and refusing to keep carrying it. For months, I had been carrying far more than anyone realized. Maybe even more than I realized. I returned Thomas's photograph to the shelf. Then I walked back into the kitchen. My laptop was still on the counter from the night before. I opened it. I logged into Butler Event Design. Then I opened the folder labeled Caldwell Butler Wedding. There were contracts, deposits, guarantees, vendor emails, change orders, invoices, far more pages than there should have been. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called Rachel. She answered on the second ring. Eva, I need your help. With what I'm not going to Claire's wedding. Silence. Then very carefully Rachel asked, What happened? I'll explain later. I looked at the stack of financial records on the screen. Right now I need you to pull every invoice, deposit, authorization, and guarantee connected to this wedding. All of them. All of them. Rachel's voice changed. She knew me well enough to understand that I had stopped crying. What are we looking for? I took a breath. I want to know exactly what I promised. And everything you didn't? Yes. I stared at Diane's email address on the invoice from the night before, especially that. Because if my daughter wanted me to step away from her wedding to keep the peace, I was going to step away. But I was beginning to understand that my presence was not the only thing everyone had been depending on. And by the next morning, we would know exactly how much of that wedding had quietly been resting on my name. Ketthuk Fan 6. Rachel arrived at my house 40 minutes after I called her. She did not bring flowers. She did not bring wine. She brought a laptop, a legal pad, and the expression she wore whenever one of our clients said, "I'm sure the contract says something different." That was one of the reasons Thomas and I had trusted her for so many years. Rachel was not easily distracted by emotion when numbers were involved. She sat down at my kitchen table, opened her computer, and said, "Start from the beginning." So I told her. I told her about Claire asking me not to come. I told her about Diane threatening to walk out. I told her what Claire had said about me being the only person she could ask because I was reasonable. Rachel did not interrupt. When I finished, she looked at me for several seconds. "I'm sorry, Eva." I nodded. I was afraid if I said anything I would start crying again. Then Rachel opened the wedding file. "Let's find out what reasonable has cost you." That sentence stayed with me. We began with the original agreement. $25,000. That was my gift. It had always been my gift. I had told Claire clearly that she could use it however she wanted. Ceremony, reception, honeymoon, down payment on a house, whatever made sense. But somewhere during the planning process, that $25,000 had stopped functioning like a gift. It had become an open door. Rachel pulled up the venue contract. $12,000 deposit. I remember. Paid through Butler Event Design. Yes. She opened the floral account. 5,600 in initial deposits. That includes Diane's upgrades. Correct. Lighting, transportation, furniture rental, specialty linens, additional servers, the champagne package, rehearsal dinner overflow. Every few minutes, Rachel would read another number aloud. I began writing them down. By the time we reached the second page, I stopped. "How much? I'm not done." "Rachel." She looked at me. "How much is currently attached to us?" She turned the screen slightly. "Direct payments, deposits or guarantees, all of it." She started adding. I watched the calculator. 27,000, 34, 41, then 50, then 60. The final number appeared. $78, 430 buys. I stared at it. That can't be right. It is. My gift was 25. I know. So we're exposed for more than 53,000 beyond that potentially. The room suddenly felt too warm. I stood and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the maple leaves moved gently in the breeze. Tomorrow, my daughter was supposed to get married. And today, I was discovering that I had quietly become the financial foundation beneath a wedding I had just been asked not to attend. "How did I let this happen?" Rachel answered carefully. "You didn't write $78,000 in checks. I know. You let vendors use the company relationship because everyone told you reimbursement was coming. That was stupid. That was trust." I turned around. In business, trust without paperwork is stupidity. Rachel gave me a sad smile. Thomas would probably say both can be true. That almost made me laugh. Almost. We went back through the records. Some charges were legitimate, things I had personally approved. The venue deposit, part of the florist retainer. A photography deposit Claire had asked me to secure when her credit card limit became an issue. Those belonged within my $25,000 gift. But other items were clearly different. Diane's upgrades. Almost all of them. Rachel highlighted the invoices. She ordered the exterior lighting. Yes. Luxury lounge furniture. Yes. Upgraded champagne. Yes. Additional guest transportation. Yes. And these imported orchids, I nodded. Her idea. Chair rental, also hers. Rachel sat back. And she told Claire she was paying for these repeatedly. But they're attached to us, apparently. We kept searching. Then Rachel stopped. "What?" She leaned closer to her screen. This is odd. What she opened an email chain. The venue had originally asked for direct billing information for the Caldwell upgrades. Someone had replied from Diane's email address. "Please continue under the Butler Event Design account. Eva has approved use of the master account for wedding-related expenses. We will reconcile privately after the event." I read it twice. I never said that. I know. I never approved that. Rachel scrolled. There's more. The same language appeared in an email to the lighting company, another to the rental company, a shorter version to the transportation vendor. Use existing Butler account. Authorization confirmed. Family reimbursement to follow. I felt cold despite the warm room. Did she copy me on any of these? Number Claire, not on the ones I'm seeing. Nathan, number Rachel kept scrolling. Then she stopped again. This one is worse. I sat beside her. Attached to an upgraded rental order was a one-page authorization form. At the bottom was a typed line approved on behalf of Butler Event Design. Below it was my name, Eva Butler. Not my signature exactly. A digital mark. Something that looked like a simplified version of it. I stared at it. That is not mine. Rachel's expression hardened. Are you sure? Absolutely. You use electronic signatures. Yes, but not that one. I pointed. My actual digital signature has my middle initial. This one did not. And I would never authorize an open upgrade under language that broad. Rachel nodded. I know. For 30 years I had signed hundreds of vendor agreements. I knew exactly how I signed business documents. This authorization was not mine. I leaned back. Did Diane forge it? We don't know that yet. But somebody did. Yes. I thought about calling Claire. Then I thought about the look on her face when she had asked me to stay home. I was not ready. Not emotionally. Not yet. What happens if we pull the account? Rachel asked. I shook my head immediately. No. She watched me. No cancellations. You're sure? Completely. I didn't mean cancel the wedding. I mean revoke company responsibility. That's different. Yes. I took a breath. This is Claire's wedding. I will not sabotage it. Agreed. But I also will not guarantee spending I did not approve. Rachel nodded. Then we separate your commitment from everyone else's. That was the moment the decision became clear. Not revenge, not punishment, accounting. I sat straighter. My 25,000 stays. Every dollar I promised. Even after what Claire did. Yes. Rachel studied me. Why? Because I gave it to her before any of this happened. I don't take back gifts because I'm hurt. That mattered to me. I needed to know that whatever happened next, I was not behaving like Diane. I would not use money as a weapon. Rachel nodded once. Then we identify which charges fit inside that 25,000. Yes. And anything beyond it goes to whoever ordered it. Or whoever authorized it. Exactly. Rachel opened a blank spreadsheet. We worked for nearly 2 hours. The original venue portion. Photography. Claire's basic floral package. A portion of catering. Those remained under my gift. Then we separated every extra. Orchids. Exterior lighting. Lounge furniture. Extra transportation. Premium champagne. Additional invitations. Special chairs. Decorative staircase installation. All Diane's requests. Some still required payment. Others were guaranteed against the company account if the primary customer failed to pay. That was the part that worried me most. I pointed to the guarantees. Remove us. Rachel looked at me. Today. Vendors may start calling the family immediately. I know. The venue could require another payment method before tomorrow. I know. You understand that could create chaos. I looked at her. Rachel, if the Caldwells intended to pay for what they ordered, providing a card or writing a check should not create chaos. She said nothing. That silence told me she agreed. I continued. I am not canceling a single chair. Not one flower. Not one glass of champagne. Understood. I am simply removing Butler Event Design as guarantor for charges we did not authorize. And the false authorizations, we notify the vendors that those were not valid. Rachel made another note. We should put that in writing. Yes. Professional. Neutral. Very. That mattered too. No accusations. No emotional language. No mention of being excluded from the wedding. I did not want anyone reading the email and thinking a wounded mother was throwing a tantrum. I wanted the facts to stand alone. Rachel drafted it. I read every sentence. My original $25,000 contribution would remain available exactly as promised. All additional services, upgrades, and change orders must be billed directly to the individuals who requested or authorized them. Butler Event Design would no longer serve as guarantor for expenses exceeding my personal contribution. Any authorization appearing to grant broader approval in my name was invalid unless confirmed directly by me or Rachel. No existing service was being canceled by us. Vendors were simply asked to contact the appropriate responsible party for payment arrangements. I read the email again. It was calm, precise, almost boring, perfect. Rachel hovered over the send button. Last chance. I looked at her. To do what? To decide you'd rather wait until after the wedding. For a moment I considered it. I imagined Saturday. Claire in her dress. The ceremony proceeding without me. Diane smiling for photographs. Vendors quietly charging whatever remained to my company because everyone assumed Eva would handle it. Maybe I could pay everything. Financially, it would hurt, but it would not destroy me. That wasn't the issue. The issue was what paying would mean. It would mean that Claire could ask me to disappear and still expect my money to remain visible. It would mean Diane could disrespect me publicly while privately relying on my business to finance her decisions. It would mean my silence had become permission. No, I said. Rachel nodded. Then she clicked send. The email went to the venue manager, the florist, the rental company, transportation, lighting, catering, every vendor connected to the master account. When it was done, we sat quietly. I expected to feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt tired. Do you think Claire will understand? I asked. Rachel did not answer immediately. Eventually, that isn't reassuring. It's the truth. I smiled sadly. Thomas had loved Rachel for that. She never gave comforting answers when honest ones were available. My phone was on the kitchen counter. For almost 15 minutes, nothing happened. Then it buzzed. An email. The venue. Thank you for clarifying. We will contact the relevant parties for updated billing information. 2 minutes later, another. The rental company. Understood. We will need replacement authorization before final installation tomorrow morning. Then the florist. Then transportation. Each message was professional, routine, nothing dramatic, until my phone rang. Claire. I looked at the screen. Rachel looked at me. You want me to stay? Yes, I answered. Hi, sweetheart. Claire did not say hello. Her voice was sharp and panicked. Mom, what did you do? I closed my eyes. There it was. The first consequence. Not of my anger, not of revenge, of simply stepping away from responsibilities that had never belonged to me. What do you mean? I asked. The venue just called me. They're asking for a credit card. The rental company says they need new authorization. Diane is freaking out. I looked across the table at Rachel. Then I said very calmly, I canceled nothing. Claire took a breath. Then why is everyone calling? Because I'm no longer guaranteeing expenses. I didn't approve. Silence. A long one. Finally, she whispered, but the Caldwells are paying those. I looked down at the $78,000 total on the legal pad. Then, sweetheart, I said there shouldn't be a problem. Claire said nothing. And in that silence for the first time, I think she began to wonder whether the story she had been told about her own wedding was true. Claire stayed silent so long that I thought the call had dropped. Claire, I'm here. Her voice sounded different now, still upset but less certain. I looked at the papers covering my kitchen table. Sweetheart, tell me exactly what the venue said. They said they need a new card on file for some of the extras. Which extras, I don't know. Lighting, furniture, transportation. Diane is calling them. Good. Good, yes. Those were Diane's requests. Claire exhaled sharply. Mom, you know what I mean. I do. You did this the day before my wedding. No, Diane placed charges on my business account without my permission before your wedding. I corrected the billing today. That feels like the same thing. It isn't. Rachel sat across from me without speaking. I appreciated that. Claire needed to hear my voice, not feel as though she were negotiating with a team. Did you cancel anything? She asked. No. Not the flowers, no. The chairs, no. The transportation, no. The lighting, no. Then why is everyone threatening to stop services? They are not threatening anything. They are asking the person responsible for those services to provide payment information. Claire gave a frustrated sound. You knew that would cause a problem. I stared at the photograph of Thomas across the room. I suspected it might reveal one. What does that mean? It means if the Caldwells were always planning to pay for the upgrades Diane ordered, then changing the card should take 5 minutes. Another silence. I could almost hear Claire thinking. Finally, she said, Diane says you're doing this because I asked you not to come. There it was. The story Diane had already prepared. Wounded mother, vindictive businesswoman, sabotaging daughter. Simple, clean, and almost believable if nobody looked at the paperwork. Do you believe her? I don't know what to believe right now. That hurt. But I kept my voice steady. Then look at the contracts. What contracts? I sent you copies. I had asked Rachel to forward everything to Claire while I was on the phone. Her inbox probably contained more financial information than she wanted to see the day before her wedding. But she needed to see it. Check your email. I heard movement, a laptop opening, then typing. Rachel mouthed, tell her where. Subject line says wedding billing clarification. I see it. Open the spreadsheet. A few seconds passed. Then Claire inhaled. What is this? A summary of the wedding expenses connected to Butler event design. That number can't be right. It is. $78,000. Yes. But you weren't paying $78,000. No. I promised 25. I know that. The rest was either advanced placed temporarily through the business or guaranteed because vendors were told reimbursement was coming. Claire went quiet again. I could hear pages clicking open. This line says exterior lighting 8,200. Yes. Diane said she was paying for that. I know. Lounge furniture 3,800. Yes. She said that too. I know. Transportation upgrade Diane. The champagne package Diane. The orchids Diane. The silence after that was heavier. Then Claire asked something very softly. Did she pay for anything? I don't know. You don't know? Not through us. What does that mean? It means Rachel and I found no reimbursement from the Caldwells for these items. Claire's breathing changed. Maybe they paid something directly. Maybe. It was important that I say that. I did not know everything yet. I was not going to accuse Diane of stealing money or forging documents based on suspicion alone. But what I knew was already enough. Then why pull everything now because you asked me to step away? That's not fair. I closed my eyes. Claire. No, Mom, listen. I asked you not to attend because Diane was threatening to ruin the wedding. I didn't ask you to step away from everything. That is exactly the problem. What you think those things are separate. She said nothing. I am not just a checkbook, Claire. I never said you were. You didn't have to. That's unfair. Is it? She began crying again. I hated hearing it. Every instinct in me wanted to soften. But if I softened too quickly, we would go right back to the same place. So I said, you asked me to disappear from the part of the wedding where I would be visible while still expecting me to remain responsible for everything happening behind the scenes. I didn't know about all these charges. I believe you. That stopped her. You do? Yes, I did. Claire could avoid conflict. She could be weak. She could hurt me. But I did not believe she had knowingly arranged to charge $53,000 beyond my gift. Then why are you talking to me like I planned this? I'm not. It feels like it. I'm asking you to understand something before tomorrow. What? If I am not welcome as your mother, I cannot continue functioning as the person who quietly fixes every problem. Claire whispered, I do want you there. Then why am I staying home? You know why? Yes. Because Diane had threatened something. Because Nathan had failed to stop it. Because Claire had chosen the person who made conflict instead of the person who didn't. I didn't say that again. She already knew. Suddenly another voice came through the phone. Claire, Diane. In the background. Claire covered the phone poorly. I'm talking to my mother. Well, tell her the venue is refusing to complete setup until they receive payment. I heard every word. I said, put me on speaker. Claire hesitated. Mom. Put me on speaker. A click. Then Claire said, okay. I sat straighter. Diane. There was a pause. Yes, Eva. Her voice had that same controlled sharpness I had heard at the rehearsal dinner. I understand the venue contacted you. You understand perfectly well. You caused it. I corrected the billing, 24 hours before the wedding. I discovered yesterday that my company had been used for charges I did not authorize. You knew there were wedding expenses. I knew there were expenses you repeatedly promised to cover. I said our family would contribute. You said you would cover the upgrades you requested. Diane laughed once. This is unbelievably petty. I looked at Rachel. Her eyebrows lifted. Petty, yes. Claire asks you to give her one peaceful day, and suddenly you start pulling money. I pulled no money. You know what I mean. No, actually. I think the details matter. Eva, my $25,000 gift remains untouched. Not $1 was withdrawn. Not one vendor was told to cancel. Not one service was removed. Then why are they calling me because you ordered those services? I was acting on behalf of the family. You were not acting on behalf of my company. Silence. I continued. And you certainly were not authorized to tell vendors that I had approved use of my master account. The silence changed. Claire spoke first. What I knew then, that she had not reached that part of the documents. Diane recovered quickly. This is ridiculous. Which part? I never claimed anything improper. I have the emails. Those were administrative. You told vendors I had approved charges. You had already been paying wedding expenses. That is not authorization. Claire interrupted. Wait. Diane, did you tell them Mom approved those charges? I told them the families were coordinating expenses. That's not what she asked. I looked across at Rachel. For the first time in months, Claire had challenged Diane instead of me. It was small. But I heard it. Diane did too. Her voice tightened. Claire, this is exactly the kind of unnecessary stress your mother creates. My hand tightened around the phone. Before I could respond, Claire said no. Just answer the question. Silence. Then Diane said, I don't have time for this. The line rustled. Claire must have walked away from her. Mom, yes. What emails? I directed her to the folder. I heard her typing. A minute passed, then another. Finally, oh my God. I said nothing. She wrote that you approved the master account. Yes. Did you? No. Another pause. Could someone at the company have no one with authority? But your name is on one of these forms. That mark is not my authorized digital signature. Claire whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she said, why didn't you tell me sooner? I found the full extent of it today. Does Nathan know? No. I have to call him. Yes. The call ended. I placed my phone on the table. Rachel said, that went better than I expected. I stared at her. That was better. She stopped defending Diane. She was right. I didn't feel good about it. But she was right. For the next hour, my phone barely stopped ringing. The florist called first. They were polite. They explained that unless a new card was provided for Diane's imported orchid upgrade, they would return to the original floral design. Will Claire still have flowers? I asked. Absolutely. Her bouquet? Yes. Bridesmaids? Yes. Centerpieces? Yes. The only affected portion is the upgrade beyond the original package. Then please work directly with whoever ordered the upgrade. I felt no guilt saying it. The rental company called next. Same issue. If replacement authorization was not received, they would use the venue's standard chairs and remove the luxury lounge setup. The wedding would still happen. People would still sit down. Nobody would be standing in an empty ballroom. Transportation called after that. Again, the original shuttle arrangement remained. Only Diane's luxury vehicle upgrade required new payment information. Every phone call told the same story. The wedding was not in danger. The extras were. The expensive, unnecessary extras Diane had insisted were essential. That distinction mattered. By late afternoon, Nathan called me. Eva. He sounded exhausted. Hi, Nathan. I just saw everything Claire sent me. All right. I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting that. For what? For not paying attention. I waited. He continued. I thought Mom and Dad were covering those upgrades. So did I. I'm trying to reach my father. Good. Mom says this is all a misunderstanding. Then it should be easy to clear up. He gave a tired laugh. That's exactly what Claire said. Interesting. What are you going to do? I'm going to figure out what my mother actually promised and what she actually paid. That sounds reasonable. Eva. Yes, I know this doesn't fix what happened with Claire. My throat tightened. No. But I want you to know I never asked her to tell you not to come. Did you tell her not to silence? There it was. Nathan finally said, not strongly enough. I appreciated the honesty. I should have, he said. Yes. Another silence. I'm sorry. Thank you. We ended the call. A few minutes later, Rachel left to return to the office. I was alone again. The house was strangely peaceful considering how many people were panicking somewhere else. I made tea. I did not call vendors. I did not call Claire. I did not call Diane. For once, I let other adults solve problems that belonged to them. At 6:30, my phone rang again. Claire, I answered. Her voice was quiet. Mom. Dad, Mark. Just called Nathan. I waited. He says he had no idea the wedding cost this much. I felt the first real chill move through me. How much did he think it cost? About $40,000. I looked down at the $78,000 total, Claire continued. He says Diane told him you insisted on paying most of it because wedding planning was your business and you wanted control over the vendors. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The lie was bigger than I expected. Not just unpaid bills, not just unauthorized approvals. Two completely different stories. One for us, one for Mark. Claire whispered, Mom, I'm here. She told us the Caldwells were paying for her upgrades. Yes. She told Mark you were paying for almost everything. Yes. Neither of us spoke. There was no need. The truth was beginning to show itself. Not all of it, but enough. Then Claire said the question I had been waiting for someone else to ask. Why would she lie to both sides? I looked toward Thomas's photograph. I don't know, sweetheart. And that was true. But for the first time, I knew we were finally asking the right question. By 7 o'clock that evening, the wedding had stopped being the biggest problem in the family. The money was. Claire was still on the phone with me when Nathan walked into whatever room she was sitting in. I heard his voice in the background. Is that Eva? Yes. Put her on speaker. A few seconds later, Nathan said, Eva, my dad's coming over. To your place, yes. Is Diane with him? No. That answer surprised me. Why not? Nathan let out a tired breath. Because they just had a fight. I sat down at the kitchen table again. What happened? My dad asked her how much she actually committed to the wedding, and she told him this was not the time. I almost laughed. That seemed to be Diane's favorite response whenever a question required a number. Nathan continued. I told her the wedding is tomorrow, so if this isn't the time, he'd like to know when exactly the time will be. Despite everything, I smiled. Mark had always been quiet. Apparently, quiet did not mean blind. Claire spoke. Mom. Mark says Diane told him months ago that you wanted to pay for most of the wedding. I know. He believed her. I understand. He thought your $25,000 was just the beginning. That is not what I told anyone. I know. The words came quickly this time. No hesitation. That mattered. For weeks, Claire had responded to every disagreement with some version of maybe Diane meant something else. Now she was finally looking directly at what had happened. Nathan said Dad is bringing bank statements. I frowned. Why he wants to see whether Mom paid anything from their joint account. That sentence made my stomach tighten. I don't need access to their finances. I know. This isn't for you. Good. I needs to know. I understood that. If Thomas had secretly promised tens of thousands of dollars without telling me, I would have wanted answers too. Nathan continued. I also asked Mom for copies of every wedding payment she made, and she said she shouldn't have to prove herself. Of course she did. Then I asked her what she paid. Silence. What did she say? Nothing specific. There it was again. No numbers, only promises. Call me when you know more, I said. Claire's voice softened. Mom. Yes, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. We'll talk about us later. I know. Deal with tomorrow first. After we hung up, I tried to eat dinner. I managed half a bowl of soup. At 8:15, Rachel called. I found something. That phrase had stopped comforting me. I went back through the vendor records, and one of the rental change orders has an IP confirmation log attached. I frowned. Meaning, the approval form was submitted electronically. The metadata shows the link was opened from the same email account we already saw. Diane's yes. I leaned back. So she submitted it. It strongly appears that way. And the signature, that's still the question. I stared at the table. Could she have copied it from somewhere? Possibly. I had signed dozens of documents during wedding planning. A determined person would not have had difficulty finding an example. Rachel continued. There's another issue. Of course there is. The florist has 3 email chains where Diane describes herself as authorized family representative for Butler Event Design. I actually closed my eyes. She is not. I know. Did anyone ask her to prove that? Apparently not. That angered me, but I understood how it happened. Diane was polished, confident. She spoke as though she belonged in every room she entered. People often mistake confidence for authority, especially when the person using it is dressed expensively and knows the right vocabulary. She knew what she was doing, I said. Rachel paused. Eva, we should be careful. I know. We know she represented herself as having authority she didn't have. That's different from knowing exactly why. Yes. Tomorrow, after the wedding situation is stable, I think we need legal advice. I agreed. Not because I wanted to prosecute my daughter's future mother-in-law the weekend of the wedding, because my business name had been used. That changed things. Keep copies of everything. Already done. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen until 9. Then headlights swept across the front windows. A car door closed. For one ridiculous second, I thought Claire had come back. Then the doorbell rang. It was Mark. Alone. He stood on my porch holding a thick envelope. He looked older than he had the night before. Eva, he said. I'm sorry to show up without calling. It's fine. Could we talk? I stepped aside. We sat in the living room. Mark kept the envelope on his lap. For several moments he stared at it. Then he said, I owe you an apology. You didn't know. That doesn't mean I wasn't part of it. I appreciated that distinction. What did Diane tell you? He rubbed one hand over his face. That you wanted to host the wedding. Host. That was the word she used. I shook my head slowly. She said because you'd spent your life in the wedding business, paying for Claire's wedding was important to you. My gift was $25,000. I know that now. What did she tell you your contribution would be? Rehearsal dinner, some transportation, maybe some additional guests. I stared at him. That's all? Yes. How much did you think Diane had committed? He opened the envelope. About 15,000 total. The room went very quiet. I did the math in my head. 25, 15 from them. That explained his $40,000 understanding. What have you actually paid? I asked. Mark pulled out several pages. 6,000 toward the restaurant. A little over 3,000 for transportation deposits. 2,000 for something Diane called guest hospitality. Roughly $11,000. Not nothing. But nowhere near the upgrades Diane had ordered. Mark looked embarrassed. I thought we were almost done. You had no idea about the orchids, number lighting, number furniture. He shook his head. Premium champagne. Another shake. I felt almost sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered that this man had sat through months of planning meetings too. Mark, did you never ask? He looked at me. I trusted my wife. I understood that answer better than I wanted to. So did I said quietly. He stared at the papers. I keep thinking there must be an explanation. Maybe there is. He looked up surprised. I continued. I'm not interested in turning suspicion into fact before we know what happened. That's generous. No, it's practical. Thomas had quietly. He stared at the papers. I keep thinking there must be an explanation. Maybe there is. He looked up surprised. I continued. I'm not interested in turning suspicion into fact before we know what happened. That's generous. No, it's practical. Thomas had taught me that too. Facts first, anger second. Mark gave a tired smile. I understand why Nathan likes you. The comment hurt more than he intended. Nathan liked me. Claire loved me. And neither had been willing to defend my place at the wedding until the financial truth appeared. Mark seemed to realize what he had said. I'm sorry. It's all right. No, it isn't. He leaned forward. Diane told me something else tonight. I waited. She said you're doing this because Claire excluded you. I let out a slow breath. She told me you're angry and trying to force Claire to choose between you and our family. Did you believe her before I saw the invoices? He paused. I wasn't sure. That answer stung, but I preferred it to a lie. And now I think Diane is afraid of something. That was exactly what I thought. Mark reached into the envelope and removed one printed email. I found this on our home office computer. He handed it to me. It was a message from Diane to a luxury rental vendor. The date was 6 weeks earlier. The first few lines were ordinary. Then I saw the sentence near the bottom. Eva has authorized all premium selections and prefers that the final accounting remain consolidated under her company until after the event. I read it twice. That is false. I know. How do you know? Because the next paragraph says you requested the upgrades personally. My stomach tightened. I never requested any of them, I figured. He looked deeply ashamed. I was at one of those meetings, Eva. You argued against the upgraded chairs, I remembered. Diane had called the venue chairs conference room furniture. I had told her nobody remembers a chair if the food is good and the marriage lasts. For once, Mark almost smiled. Then he pulled out another paper. This is worse. It was the authorization form Rachel had already found. The false signature. Mark pointed to the bottom. Is that yours? No. You're certain completely. He leaned back. For the first time I saw anger in him. Not discomfort, not embarrassment, anger. I asked Diane about this. My pulse quickened. What did she say? She said Claire gave her permission to handle it. That does not give her permission to sign my name. I told her that. And she said everyone was acting like this was some criminal investigation over a wedding. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Nobody had used the word criminal. Diane had. That told me something. Then my phone rang. Nathan. I answered and put him on speaker. My dad there. Yes. Good. His voice sounded harder than I had ever heard it. Mom finally sent me what she says is proof of the wedding budget. Mark leaned toward the phone. What proof? A spreadsheet. And it was created this afternoon. Mark closed his eyes. Of course. Nathan continued. It claims Eva agreed to cover venue floral rentals and production, while Mom and Dad handled rehearsal dinner and guest hospitality. That is false, I said. I know. How? Because Claire found the original planning email. I sat up. What email? Claire's voice appeared beside his. The one I sent after our first budget meeting. I remembered vaguely. She had summarized who offered what. Claire read from it. Mom, $25,000 gift flexible use. Diane and Mark Caldwell guest-related additions and any upgrades requested beyond original plan. I closed my eyes. There it was, simple, clear, written months earlier. Mark said, Do you still have it? Yes. Save it. I already did. Then Nathan said, There's something else. I felt that familiar tightening again, what I called the rental company myself. I waited. They said Mom didn't just approve changes. His voice lowered. She told them that if they ever needed verbal confirmation, they should contact her instead of Eva, because Eva was becoming forgetful and had asked Diane to manage details for her. For a moment, nobody spoke. Forgetful. That word landed differently. This was no longer simply financial entitlement. Diane had created a reason vendors should bypass me. She had quietly undermined my credibility while using my name. Mark whispered. She said what Nathan repeated it. My hands began trembling, not because I was afraid, because I finally understood part of the strategy. If a vendor questioned why Diane was speaking for my company, she had already prepared an explanation. Eva was older. Eva was forgetful. Eva needed help. I was 68, not helpless. I still reviewed corporate contracts. I still managed investments. I still worked when I chose to. And Diane had apparently used my age to make unauthorized control seem believable. Mark stood abruptly. I'm going home. Nathan said, Dad, no. His voice was firm. I want an answer from your mother. Then Claire spoke. Mark, please don't start another fight tonight. The old Claire. The peacekeeper. But this time Mark answered before I could. Claire, this fight already started. We're just finally admitting who started it. I looked at the phone. Claire went silent. Mark left a minute later. I stayed on the call with Claire and Nathan. What happens now? Claire asked. Nathan answered before I did. Now we find out the truth. Claire's voice was small. Our wedding is tomorrow. I know. What if this destroys everything? I felt the ache in her words. But I also knew the answer. Truth does not destroy what is healthy, sweetheart. She said nothing. It reveals what was already broken. 20 minutes later, Nathan called again. This time, Claire was not on the line. His voice sounded stunned. My dad found her personal credit card statements. I waited. How bad? How bad? He swallowed. Multiple cards near their limits. Cash advances, luxury purchases, payments my father didn't know about. That explained the fear, the avoidance, the constant promises without numbers. But Nathan wasn't finished. And Eva. Yes, my mother just admitted she never had the money to cover those upgrades. I closed my eyes. The room seemed to go completely still. What did she expect to happen? Nathan took several seconds before answering. She said she thought you would pay. There it was, the simplest answer, the ugliest one. Not because she thought I had agreed, not because she misunderstood, because she thought I would pay. I opened my eyes. Why, Nathan's voice was barely above a whisper. Because she said you would never risk embarrassing Claire. I stared toward the dark window. Suddenly, every humiliation made sense in a new way. Diane had not mistaken my silence for weakness. She had counted on it. And now I understood why she had become so desperate to keep me away from the wedding. It wasn't only because she disliked me. It was because the closer I got to the actual finances, the more likely I was to discover what she had done. I did not sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, another piece of the last few months seemed to move into place. Diane insisting on expensive upgrades. Diane avoiding exact numbers. Diane telling Mark that I wanted to pay. Diane telling vendors I had authorized her. Diane telling people I was forgetful. And then when I finally asked one direct question at the rehearsal dinner, Diane deciding that my presence at the wedding had become intolerable. It was no longer confusing. It was a pattern. By 6:30 the next morning, I was sitting in my kitchen with coffee I had reheated twice and still hadn't finished. My mother of the bride dress hung upstairs. The wedding was later that afternoon. I had no intention of wearing it. At 7:10 Nathan called. I answered immediately. Good morning. He gave a humorless laugh. I'm not sure good is the word. What happened? My dad and I were up until almost 3. I looked toward the window. What did you find? He exhaled. A lot. I waited. Mom has 4 credit cards Dad didn't know about. I closed my eyes. Nathan continued. 2 are close to maxed out. 1 has cash advances. There are luxury purchases, restaurant bills, clothing gifts, hotel charges. How long? At least 2 years. And your father had no idea, not the full extent. That was believable. People imagine financial deception always requires secret bank accounts and elaborate schemes. Sometimes it only requires one partner who trusts, and another who knows exactly which envelopes to open first. Nathan went on. Dad handles the mortgage, utilities, investments, taxes. Mom handled most of the social spending. And he didn't check. He trusted her. There was that word again. Trust. So useful until it became evidence against you. What does this have to do with the wedding? I asked. Nathan was quiet for a second. She told Dad she could cover the wedding extras from a separate personal account. Did that account exist? Yes. My eyebrows lifted. But there's almost nothing in it. How much less than $4,000? I stared at my coffee. And she promised how much we're still calculating. Nathan paused. At minimum more than 30,000. That number did not surprise me anymore. What did she say when you confronted her? She said she planned to move money around after the wedding. From where? She never gave me a clear answer. Of course she didn't. Nathan sounded exhausted. Then he said, Eva, I need to tell you something and I don't know how you're going to feel about it. I tightened my grip on the phone. What? She admitted that she expected your company to carry the balances until after the wedding. I already know that. No. I mean, she expected it deliberately. I said nothing. He continued. She thought that once the wedding was over, you'd be too embarrassed to ask Claire to cover it. My stomach turned. And if I asked Diane, she said she would tell you that the costs were already mixed together and there was no point creating family conflict over who ordered what. I leaned back slowly. So that was the plan. Not sophisticated, not clever, just emotionally calculated. Create enough confusion. Wait until after the wedding, then count on me to value family harmony more than $50,000. Nathan's voice grew quieter. She said, Eva has money. It's not like this would hurt her. For a second, anger flared so sharply that I had to put the coffee cup down. There are few things more revealing than hearing someone explain why taking advantage of you does not count because you can afford the loss. I forced myself to speak calmly. Did she say why she wanted such an expensive wedding in the first place? Nathan let out a long breath. Yes. I waited. She wanted people to think everything was going well. What people, everyone? That answer was too broad. Nathan. I know. He paused. She's been trying to keep up appearances for a long time. With whom? Her friends, Dad's business circle, people at the club, people she knows from charity boards. I thought of Diane's guest list. The Whitcombs. People Nathan barely knew. Clients Mark had not wanted to invite. Suddenly, the extra 96 names made sense. The wedding had become an audience. Nathan continued. Dad says their finances are fine overall, but not the way Mom presents them. What does that mean? They're comfortable. They are not unlimited money wealthy. That also made sense. Diane dressed expensively, entertained expensively, spoke as though cost was never a consideration. But wealth and the performance of wealth were not the same thing. Dad thinks she's been using credit to maintain a lifestyle she didn't want to admit they couldn't sustain. And the wedding became part of that performance. Yes. I thought about the James River estate, the orchids, luxury cars, champagne, custom lighting, guests. Claire barely knew. None of those things had been for my daughter. They had been props. Nathan, I said, why did your mother care so much whether I attended? He was silent for several seconds. Then he said, because of the rehearsal dinner. I know she was embarrassed. It was more than that. I waited. She said when that venue manager approached you, she realized you were starting to look at the billing. My throat tightened. Nathan continued. She knew once you started asking questions, you would probably see the emails, the false authorizations. Yes. And keeping me away from the wedding helped how she thought she could keep vendors from speaking to you directly. That was the moment the final piece clicked. I sat completely still. If I wasn't there, she could handle any payment questions herself and tell them what. That final reconciliation was already arranged through Butler Event Design. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. Nathan sounded ashamed. She planned to tell some of them the company was processing the final balances Monday, so she needed 2 days. Yes. And after the wedding, she assumed you wouldn't do anything that might embarrass Claire. Again, always the same assumption. I would absorb it. Because I was the mother. Because I was financially secure. Because I was reasonable. Because I loved my daughter. That last one hurt the most. My love had become part of Diane's financial strategy. I walked into the living room while Nathan remained on the phone. Thomas's photograph sat on the bookshelf. I stopped in front of it. You know what your mother misunderstood, I asked. What she thought kindness meant I had no limit. Nathan did not answer. She thought because I could afford to solve the problem I was responsible for solving it. I'm sorry, I know. No, Eva. I mean for all of it. I heard emotion in his voice. I should have stopped this months ago. Yes. He accepted that without defending himself. I kept telling Claire my mother would calm down after the wedding, and Claire kept telling me the same thing. I know. You were both waiting for the difficult person to become reasonable instead of asking the reasonable person to tolerate less. That's exactly what we did. For once I felt some respect for him. Not because he had fixed anything, because he had finally stopped hiding behind explanations. I asked, where is Diane now at home? With Mark, yes. How are they bad? I didn't ask for details. That was their marriage, not mine. Then Nathan said Mom told Dad she didn't think she was stealing. I closed my eyes. What did she call it? Borrowing time. That phrase disgusted me. Borrowing time with someone else's money. Borrowing authority with someone else's name. Borrowing credibility by calling me forgetful. What did your father say? Nathan paused. He said if you have to lie about who approved something you already know, it isn't borrowing. Good for Mark. A few minutes later, Claire called. Nathan apparently handed her the phone. She sounded as though she had been crying for hours. Mom, I'm here. I know everything now. No, sweetheart. You know more. I don't think any of us know everything. I know enough. I waited. She took a shaky breath. She used you. Yes. And I helped her. That surprised me. You didn't know about the money. No. Then don't take responsibility for what you didn't know. But I knew how she treated you. I said nothing. Claire continued. I saw the pictures at the shower. My throat tightened. I saw where she seated you. Still, I said nothing. I knew you didn't want to change your dress. Her voice broke. And every time you were hurt, I asked you to be the bigger person because it was easier than asking her to stop. There it was. The truth I had needed her to see. Not about money, about us. Claire whispered, I'm so sorry. I sat on the edge of the sofa. Thank you. I don't deserve you saying thank you. That doesn't mean I shouldn't acknowledge an apology. She started crying. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, Please come today. My eyes closed. There it was. The invitation I had once expected to be unquestionable. Now it felt complicated. Claire, I mean it. I know. I want my mother at my wedding. Yesterday those words would have broken me open with relief. Today they were not enough. What changed? She went quiet. Everything. No. I kept my voice gentle. The money changed. Diane got caught. Nathan confronted her. Mark confronted her. But I need to know what changed inside you. Claire cried softly. I realized what I did. Did you? Yes. Then tell me. She took several seconds. I was afraid of her. I know. And because I knew you wouldn't threaten me, I chose you to lose. The sentence landed heavily. Claire continued before I could respond. I told myself I was keeping the peace, yes, but there was no peace for you. My eyes filled. No. And if none of this financial stuff had come out? She stopped. I already knew the rest. She forced herself to finish. I would have let you stay home. I looked at Thomas's photograph. That was the wound. Not Diane. Not money. My daughter had been prepared to marry without me because disappointing me felt safer than confronting someone else. Claire whispered, I don't know how to fix that. You don't fix it this morning. Then what do? You tell the truth. To who? Start with yourself. She breathed unevenly. Then she asked again, Will you come? I looked upstairs toward the bedroom where my dress hung untouched. I don't know. Mom, I love you. I love you too. But love does not erase what happened yesterday. I know. And I made you a promise. What promise? That I wouldn't come. She went silent. I continued. I meant it when I said it. Claire's voice became small. So you're really staying home? I haven't decided what I'm doing. That sounds like the same thing. It isn't. I could almost picture her frowning. There was something forming in my mind now. Not revenge. Not punishment. Something different. The wedding Claire had originally wanted was still buried somewhere under all of Diane's additions. Warm, elegant, personal. 120 guests. No performance, no competition, no mother being hidden in a service hallway. No daughter walking down the aisle terrified that one wrong word would make someone storm out. I thought about Claire's first binder. Simple wedding. Maybe that wedding had never truly disappeared. Maybe it had simply been covered over. Claire. I said, what do you actually want today? She hesitated. To marry Nathan. That's one thing. And... I waited. I want you there. What else? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I had not heard her say in months. I want Diane to stop deciding everything. There it was. Not a full solution, but a beginning. I looked at the clock. It was not yet 8:30. There were hours before the ceremony. Then perhaps I said carefully, You and Nathan need to decide what wedding you're actually having. What does that mean? It means yesterday you asked me not to attend a wedding built around keeping Diane happy. Claire said nothing. I agreed. Mom, if you want today to be different, changing my seat isn't enough. I could hear her breathing. What are you saying? I'm saying the problem was never one chair. Before she could answer, another voice came through the phone. Nathan. Eva. I think I understand. I waited. He said, we need to stop protecting the wedding from the truth. That was exactly it. For months, everyone had protected the event, the guest list, the schedule, the photographs, the appearance of harmony, and in doing so, we had sacrificed actual people. Then do that, I said. Claire whispered, what if everything changes? I looked once more at Thomas smiling from the bookshelf. Maybe it needs to. After we hung up, I stayed seated for several minutes. Upstairs, the champagne-colored dress remained unworn. At the venue, florists and caterers were preparing for a ceremony that might no longer look anything like the wedding Diane had planned. And for the first time since my daughter asked me to stay home, I felt something besides heartbreak. I felt possibility. Because the truth had finally entered the room. Now everyone had to decide whether they wanted peace badly enough to stop pretending. Claire came back to my house a little after 10 that morning. This time she came alone. No Nathan, no Diane, no binder, no phone in her hand. Just my daughter standing on the front porch, in jeans, a white button-down shirt, and the same tired face I had seen the day before. For a moment neither of us moved. Then I stepped aside. Come in. She walked past me and went straight to the kitchen. Again. That kitchen seemed determined to hold every difficult conversation we had left. Claire sat in the same chair she had used when she asked me not to attend. I noticed that immediately. So did she. Her eyes dropped to the table. I almost turned around 3 times on the way here. Why? Because I don't know what to say. I sat across from her. Then don't start with what you think I want to hear. She nodded. For several seconds she rubbed her thumb along the edge of the table. Then she said Nathan told Diane she doesn't get to make any more decisions about the wedding. I waited. She didn't take it well, I imagine not. I told her if she comes today, she comes as his mother, not as the person in charge. That sounds healthy. Claire gave a tired little laugh. Healthy feels terrifying right now. I know. Mark agrees with him. That helps. It does. She looked toward the window. Diane says everyone is humiliating her. I said nothing. She says Nathan is choosing you over her. He isn't. I know. He's choosing his own wedding over her control. I know. Claire's voice was quieter now. She doesn't see the difference. That did not surprise me. People who are accustomed to controlling others often interpret boundaries as betrayal. But I did not say it. This was not really about Diane anymore. Claire folded her hands together. I came because I need to apologize. You already did. No. She shook her head. I said I was sorry because I felt terrible. That's not the same thing as understanding what I did. I looked at her more carefully. Go on. She took a breath. I kept thinking about what you asked me. What if none of the money had come out? Would I have married without you? My chest tightened. Claire stared at her hands. The answer is yes. I already knew. Still hearing her say it clearly hurt. She continued. If the venue hadn't called, if the invoices hadn't surfaced, if Mark hadn't discovered Diane was lying, I would have gotten dressed today, gone to the venue, and let you stay here alone. My eyes filled, but I did not look away. Claire's voice broke. And I would have told myself I had no choice. That was the sentence that mattered. Not I was wrong. Not Diane manipulated me. I had no choice. That was the lie Claire had been telling herself for months. I leaned back. Why? She blinked. Why what? Why would you have believed you had no choice? She thought for a long time. Because every other choice felt worse. To you, yes. And staying home felt worse to me. I know. Did you know yesterday? Claire swallowed. I knew you would be hurt. That isn't the same. No. She wiped her cheek. I don't think I let myself understand how hurt. I let the silence sit between us. She needed to stay inside that discomfort, not forever, but long enough to learn something from it. Finally, she said, I think I've done this for years, with Diane, with people. That surprised me. She looked embarrassed. At work, too. How if two people disagree, I usually go to the easier person and ask them to compromise. I almost smiled sadly. That sounds familiar. I thought that made me good at managing people. Sometimes it probably does. But sometimes I'm just rewarding whoever is most difficult. There it was. I nodded. Claire looked up. That's what I did to you. Yes. She flinched slightly, but I would not soften the truth. You knew Diane might explode, I said. You knew I wouldn't. Yes. So you asked me. Yes. Because I was safer. Yes. Her voice cracked on that one word. I reached for my coffee, though it had gone cold. Claire continued. When I told you that you were stronger, I actually thought I was complimenting you. I know. I thought strong meant you could handle it. I could handle it. She looked confused. I continued. That does not mean I should have had to. Her eyes filled again. No. There is a difference between being strong enough to survive being hurt and volunteering someone to be hurt because you know they will survive. Claire covered her mouth. For a second I wondered if I had gone too far. Then she nodded. You're right. I had spent so much of my life trying to make things easier for my daughter that hearing her accept something painful without asking me to rescue her felt almost unfamiliar. She looked toward the living room. Dad would be ashamed of me. No. She looked back at me. Mom, your father would be disappointed in the decision. That sounds like the polite version. It is the accurate version. How can you know? Because Thomas loved you. So loving someone means believing they can do better than their worst decision. Claire stared at me. I continued. He would not reduce you to one terrible choice. Neither will I. Her face crumpled. She lowered her head and began crying. This time I moved. I went around the table and sat beside her. She leaned against me like she had when she was 15 and had her heart broken for the first time. I held her. But I did not say, It's fine. It wasn't fine. And that mattered. After a while she whispered, I'm sorry I made your love the reason you had to lose. I closed my eyes. That sentence went deeper than any apology before it. Thank you. We sat quietly. Eventually she straightened. Her mascara was gone, though she had probably intended to save it for later. She laughed through her tears. I'm going to look terrible in my wedding pictures. You have several hours, assuming I still have a wedding. You do. She looked at me. You sound very sure. Do you still want to marry Nathan? Yes. Does Nathan still want to marry you? Yes. Then you have the essential ingredients. She smiled faintly. You really did spend 30 years in weddings. I've seen ceremonies happen after hurricanes, power failures, food poisoning, divorced parents having screaming matches, and one groom locking himself in a bathroom for 45 minutes. Claire actually laughed. What happened? He came out and got married 22 years ago. Still married last I heard. Her smile faded into something softer. Then she asked the question I had known was coming. Will you come today? I looked at her. She immediately added, Not because Diane got caught. I waited. Not because I'm embarrassed. Still I waited. Not because I need you to fix anything. That one mattered. She took my hand. I want my mother there. My throat tightened. I wanted to be there. I know. I had planned that day in my head since you got engaged. I know. I even put a picture of your father in my purse. Claire's face collapsed again. Oh, Mom. She squeezed my hand. Please. I looked down. This was what I had wanted yesterday. An invitation. A reversal. My place restored. So why didn't I immediately say yes? Because something had changed, not my love, my understanding. If I walked into that wedding now and pretended everything had been repaired because Claire apologized, then what had she really learned? More importantly, what had I learned? For months, we had dealt with every problem by restoring the appearance of normal. Diane insults me. We move on. I change dresses. We move on. Diane excludes me. We move on. Claire asks me to miss the wedding, then discovers Diane lied. Now Mom returns. Wedding saved. Photographs beautiful. Everyone smiles. That would be another version of the same mistake. Claire. I said carefully, what wedding am I being invited to? She frowned. Mine. Which one? I don't understand. The one you originally wanted, or the one Diane built? She looked down. I don't know. You need to. I just want today to happen. I understand. No, Mom. I mean, I don't care about the orchids anymore, or the special chairs, or whether there's a champagne tower. I don't even know why we have half these things. I said nothing. She continued. I looked at the guest list this morning, and there are people coming today I have never met. How many? I counted 27. I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. 27 strangers, basically. Why? Because Diane said they were important. To whom Claire shook her head. That's what Nathan asked. And she said they're friends of the family. Are they? Some of them. Some are people from organizations she's involved with. I nodded. The wedding had become a performance. Claire finally saw it. What do you want? I asked again. She looked at me. I want the wedding I had before everyone told me what it needed to be. That answer sounded like my daughter. What did that wedding look like? She thought for a second. You and me getting ready together. My eyes filled. Nathan's dad making some awful joke during pictures. I smiled. He probably will. Dinner with people we actually know. Good. Flowers that look like flowers instead of an installation. I laughed softly. Your florist will appreciate that. Claire smiled. Then she said, and I want to walk down the aisle without wondering who might storm out if they don't get their way. There it was. The real request. Not, Mom, please save my wedding. Mom, I want to stop being afraid. I squeezed her hand. Then you need to stop negotiating with threats. I know. Starting today. She nodded. What if Diane leaves? Then Diane leaves. Claire closed her eyes. I watched her absorb it. What if other people leave? Then they leave. What if everyone talks about it? They will. She opened her eyes. I smiled. People talk about everything at weddings. The food, the dress, the weather, the divorced uncle, the bridesmaid who drank too much champagne. You cannot build a marriage around avoiding gossip. Claire gave a small laugh. Then she became serious. I wish I'd understood that earlier. So do I. Can you forgive me? I took a breath. Yes. Her eyes widened. But forgiveness is not the same as pretending nothing happened. I understand. I hope you do. I want to. That was enough for now. She glanced at the clock. I should go back. Yes. She stood, then stopped. So, will you come? I walked with her toward the front door. I haven't decided. Her face fell slightly, but she nodded. Okay. She did not beg. That mattered too. At the door she hugged me. Whatever you decide, I love you. I love you too. She stepped outside, then turned back. Mom. Yes, if you don't come, I'll understand. That was the first time anyone had offered to accept my decision without asking me to make it easier for them. I watched her drive away. Then I went upstairs. The champagne dress was still hanging from my closet door. I took it down, held it against myself, then placed it carefully on the bed. I still had not decided whether I would wear it. But for the first time the choice was actually mine. Across town. Claire and Nathan were about to decide whether their wedding would continue as the elaborate event Diane had constructed or become something closer to what they had wanted from the beginning. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I walked into that venue, I would not walk in as the woman who had been grudgingly allowed back. I would not enter through a side door. I would not sit quietly in whatever chair remained. I would not return simply because Diane had lost control. If my daughter wanted me beside her, then she needed to choose that openly, not secretly, not apologetically, not because it was easier now. And by the time the first guests began arriving that afternoon, Claire would face that choice in front of everyone. By noon, I still had not put on the dress. It lay across my bed, perfectly pressed, the champagne fabric catching the pale light from the window. I stood in front of it for several minutes, then I walked away. Downstairs, the house felt too quiet. The wedding was only a few hours away, and for the first time since Claire was born, there was somewhere important I was supposed to be, and no one was certain whether I would go. I made tea. I did not drink it. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Rachel, 1 from Nathan, 2 texts from Claire. The first said, "We're simplifying everything." The second came 20 minutes later. "I'm scared, but I'm doing it." I read that line twice. Then I put the phone down. Across town, the venue was already being transformed. I knew exactly what that morning should have looked like. Florists arriving with carts, rental crews unloading chairs, catering staff checking refrigeration, the band running sound, bridesmaids carrying garment bags and coffee, the photographer taking detail shots of rings, invitations, shoes. For nearly 30 years, I had watched wedding mornings become organized chaos. But that morning, I was not there, and for once, nobody could call me to fix it. At 12:30, Rachel called again. I answered. "Everything okay?" "That depends on your definition of okay." I smiled faintly. "What happened?" The rental company got updated payment authorization from Mark for all of Diane's upgrades. That caught my attention. What did he approve? Only what Claire and Nathan decided they actually wanted. I sat straighter. What did they remove? Luxury lounge furniture, specialty chairs, exterior decorative lighting, the orchids gone. I actually laughed. What are they using? The original floral plan: white roses, blush garden flowers, greenery. The plan Claire had loved months ago. What about transportation back to the original shuttle arrangement? Champagne standard package. The staircase installation removed. I looked toward the window. The wedding was getting smaller, not ruined, smaller, like somebody was peeling layers off something that had become buried underneath them. Rachel continued. And the guest list may be shrinking too. How Nathan called some of the last-minute Caldwell invitees and told them there had been a family misunderstanding. I frowned. He uninvited people the day of the wedding? Not exactly. She paused. Apparently several were never formal personal guests in the first place. Diane had invited them through professional and social contacts. Nathan told them the wedding had become more intimate than expected and apologized. That must have been uncomfortable. Very. Good. Rachel laughed. You're allowed to enjoy one consequence. No. I'm enjoying Nathan finally taking responsibility. That too. I hesitated. And Diane. Rachel went quiet. I heard she's at the venue. My stomach tightened. Doing what? Arguing, of course. With whom? Mostly Nathan. I glanced upstairs. Do you know what happened? Only pieces? Rachel lowered her voice as though Diane might somehow hear us from across Richmond. She showed up and discovered the lounge furniture wasn't coming. And she demanded that the rental company restore everything. Did they know? They asked for her credit card. I closed my eyes. What did she do? She said the family had already handled payment. And the vendor. They told her Mark had only approved the original package. I could picture Diane's face. The polished control disappearing. The quiet panic underneath. Rachel added. Then Nathan stepped in. What did he say? I wasn't there, Eva. How do you know all this vendor gossip travels faster than champagne at a wedding? That was true. Apparently, Nathan told her very clearly that there would be no more upgrades unless she personally paid for them. I felt something loosen inside me. Not because Diane was losing, because Nathan was finally choosing. Did she pay? No. I wasn't surprised. Rachel continued. And then they had the bigger conversation. What bigger conversation? Who controls the wedding? I closed my eyes. There it was. I had known it was coming. How bad? I think bad enough that half the staff found reasons to be somewhere nearby. Despite myself, I smiled. Event workers could detect family drama from 50 yards away. What did Nathan say? From what I heard, he told Diane that if she came to the wedding, she was coming as his mother. I stayed quiet. Rachel continued. Not as host, not as planner, not as the person approving decisions, as his mother. And Diane. She asked whether he was humiliating her in front of vendors. Of course she did. What did he say? He said, "No, Mom, I'm telling you where the boundary is." I leaned back. For Nathan, that might have been the most difficult sentence of his life. Mark backed him. That surprised me less now. After the night Mark had experienced, I imagined something inside him had shifted too. I thanked Rachel and ended the call. 10 minutes later, Nathan called. "Eva, you sound terrible. That's generous. What happened?" He sighed. "My mother thinks I've betrayed her. Because you removed some chairs. You know it isn't about chairs. No, it's about control." That was the clearest thing he had said since I met him. She said I'm letting Claire's family dictate the wedding. I almost laughed. "My family, I told her that you aren't even here." Good point. That did not improve her mood. I could hear noise behind him. Voices, footsteps, a door closing. "Where are you, venue office? Are you hiding?" "Yes." I laughed for the first time that day. So much for brave boundaries. "Give me 10 minutes. "Fair enough." He grew serious. "I owe you another apology. You've apologized. Not for this." I waited. "My mother has been controlling rooms like this my entire life." His voice was quieter. "If she was upset, everyone adjusted. If she didn't like a restaurant, we changed restaurants. If she was offended by somebody, we stopped inviting them. If she threatened not to come somewhere, people begged her. I understood. So when she started doing it with the wedding, I treated it like normal. And Claire learned from you that keeping Diane calm was everyone's job." Yes, that was unfair. I know. There was no defensiveness in him now. That mattered. I asked, "Is Claire okay?" He paused. "She's in the bridal suite, crying. Not anymore." Good. She made a decision. My heart quickened. What decision? She told Mom that if she threatens to leave again, nobody is going to stop her. I went very still. My Claire. The woman who had spent months trying to prevent exactly that. What did Diane say? Nathan almost laughed. She said, "You would let me walk out of my son's wedding." And Claire, she said no. You would choose to walk out. My eyes filled instantly. That distinction. So simple. So powerful. For months, Claire had believed she was responsible for Diane's reactions. Now she finally understood. A threat only controlled you if you accepted responsibility for what the other person chose to do. I swallowed. I'm proud of her. So am I. Did Diane leave number interesting? The threat had always depended on being chased. Without that, she stayed. Nathan lowered his voice. She said she may still leave before the ceremony. Then that is her decision. That's what Claire said. I smiled. My daughter was learning quickly. Then Nathan told me something else. Mom finally admitted why she kept adding things. I sat down. What did she say? That people expected it. What people she couldn't really answer? I could. People she wanted to impress. People she wanted to believe she was wealthier than she was. People whose opinions mattered more than her son's actual wedding. Nathan continued. She said if the wedding looked cheap, everyone would think Dad's business was struggling. I frowned. Is it no? Then why would anyone think that? Because apparently some of their friends know Mom has been spending differently. I understood. Diane had been trying to cover one illusion with another. How did Claire react? She asked why our wedding had to become evidence that Mom was doing fine. That sounded exactly like the question I wished she had asked months ago. And Diane? She said Claire wouldn't understand because she didn't grow up in our circles. There it was. The class insult. Again. Only this time I wasn't there to absorb it. What did Claire say? She said, maybe that's why I still know a wedding is supposed to be about the people getting married. I closed my eyes and smiled. Good girl. Nathan laughed softly. She's stronger than I gave her credit for. No. I corrected him gently. She's becoming stronger because she's finally using the part of herself she spent months suppressing. He went quiet. I think you're right. There was another sound behind him. Someone knocking. I need to go. Go. Then he hesitated. Eva. Yes, I hope you come. My throat tightened. I know. But if you don't, I understand. Those words mattered too. I was no longer asking me to solve anything. We ended the call. At 1:30, I walked upstairs again. The dress was still there. I ran my hand over the fabric. Then I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside was the small framed photograph of Thomas I had planned to carry. I picked it up. "You're missing quite a morning," I said. His smile looked almost amused. I sat on the edge of the bed. "What would you do?" Of course there was no answer. But I remembered something he once told Claire when she was a teenager. She had been upset because two friends were fighting, and both expected her to choose sides. Thomas had listened patiently, and then said, "Sometimes the only way to stop being pulled between people is to stop standing where they put you." At 15, Claire had rolled her eyes. At 68, I finally understood exactly what he meant. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Guests are arriving soon." A second message followed. "I'm not asking you to decide faster. I just want you to know I love you." I stared at the words. Then another appeared. "And I'm sorry your chair is empty because of something I asked for." My eyes filled. I typed back, "I love you too, nothing more." At the venue, the first guests began arriving around 2:30. I knew because Mark called me. "Eva." "Hello, Mark. I hope I'm not bothering you." "You're not. I wanted to tell you something." "All right." "Diane is still here." I smiled faintly. "I heard. She's quiet. That must be new." Mark laughed unexpectedly. Then his voice softened. "She asked me if I was taking everyone else's side." "What did you say?" "That there shouldn't be sides." "Good answer." "And I told her I loved her, but loving her didn't require pretending she hadn't lied." I felt something soften. That couldn't have been easy. "No." He paused. "I should have noticed more. So should a lot of us." "Yes." Then he said, "Claire looks beautiful." My chest tightened. I closed my eyes. "Thank you." She keeps looking at the front row. I knew exactly what he meant. My chair. The mother of the bride chair. Empty. "I thought you should know." After we hung up, I stood in the middle of my bedroom. The wedding was moving forward. Without orchids. Without luxury chairs. Without unnecessary guests. Without anyone begging Diane to stay. But also without me. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine what that empty chair would feel like to Claire. Not as punishment, as truth. A visible reminder of what fear had cost us. I looked at the clock, then at the dress, then at Thomas's photograph. I still did not put the dress on. Not yet. Because something in me knew this could not be solved simply by appearing at the last minute. Claire needed to make one more choice. Not privately, not in my kitchen, not over the phone. At the venue, with the aisle waiting, with guests watching, with Diane sitting somewhere in that room, and with the empty chair in the front row, reminding everyone that keeping the peace had already cost too much. At 3:15 that afternoon, I was still at home. The ceremony was scheduled for 4. My dress remained on the bed. My shoes were still in their box. I had done my hair, though I told myself it was only because I needed something to do. That was a lie. Some part of me was still waiting. Not for an apology. Not anymore. Claire had apologized. Not for permission. I had spent too many months letting other people decide where I belonged. I was waiting to understand whether my daughter was truly ready to choose differently when the cost became public. That was the part nobody talks about. It is easy to set a boundary in a kitchen with your mother. It is harder to hold it in a ballroom filled with 200 people. At 3:20, my phone rang. "Rachel." I answered immediately. "What happened?" "Nothing yet." Her voice was low. I could hear voices behind her. "You're at the venue, yes." "Why?" "Because Claire asked me to come." That surprised me. As a guest, as insurance against chaos, probably. Despite myself, I smiled. "What does it look like, beautiful?" My chest tightened. Rachel continued. "Not extravagant, just beautiful. The flowers, the original arrangement. White roses, blush, ranunculus greenery." I closed my eyes. Claire's flowers. Not Diane's flowers. And the room standard chairs. Scandalous. Rachel laughed softly. No one has fainted yet. What about Diane? And she's seated. That surprised me. With Mark, yes. Quiet for now. I walked toward the living room window. Rachel paused. She's dressed. My throat tightened. How does she look? You want the professional answer or the friend answer, friend? She looks like she's trying very hard not to cry. I gripped the phone. Because I'm not there. Yes. The answer hurt. I had expected it to. I just hadn't expected it to hurt so physically, like pressure behind my ribs. Rachel lowered her voice. She keeps looking at your chair. I said nothing. Eva, I'm here. The coordinator wants to start seating the wedding party. Then they should. You're sure? No, that was the truth. Rachel did not push. I'll call if something changes. Thank you. The line went quiet. Then I added Rachel. Yes, don't try to convince her to do anything. I won't. She has to choose. I know. We hung up. At the venue, guests were beginning to take their seats. I knew the layout without being there. The ceremony lawn overlooked the river. White chairs arranged in two sections. A wide aisle between them. A wooden arbor at the front. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that needed imported flowers or $30,000 of unnecessary decoration. Just enough. I imagined the first row. Mark, Diane, Nathan's sister, and across the aisle my empty chair. At 3:32 Claire called. I answered on the first ring. Neither of us spoke. Then I heard her breathe. Mom, yes, sweetheart. I'm dressed. I heard. Rachel told you yes. She shouldn't have. She didn't tell me anything you wouldn't want me to know. Claire was quiet. Then she said, I wish you could see me. My eyes filled. So do I. I'm wearing Grandma's earrings. I smiled. My mother's pearl earrings. I had given them to Claire the week after she got engaged. She would have loved that. I think Dad would too. He would. Silence again. Then I heard a shaky breath. Everyone's almost seated. I know. You're really not coming. It was not a question. I told you I wouldn't attend the wedding you were asking me to disappear from. I know. I meant it. I know. She whispered. I hate that I asked. I know that too. Another pause. Then she said, I thought if I apologized enough, maybe I could undo it. But you can't. Her breathing caught. Mom, you can repair something without pretending it never broke. She was crying now. I could hear it. I wanted to rush through the phone and hold her. But I stayed still. What do I do? She asked. That depends. On what you believe this wedding means now. I told you. I want to marry Nathan. Then marry him. But I want you there. That part is not entirely about what you want. The words sounded harsher than I intended. I softened my voice. Claire, you asked me to stay home because you believed Diane's reaction mattered more than my presence. I know. Today you've told her that isn't true anymore. Yes. Now you have to decide whether that truth belongs only in private. She did not answer. I continued. You cannot make me come, I know. But you can decide what you are willing to do if I don't. Claire was silent for a long time. Then someone spoke near her. Probably the coordinator. I heard Claire say, Give me 5 minutes. She returned to the call. They want to start. Then you need to decide. I'm scared. I know. What if everyone thinks I'm being dramatic? They might. What if Diane tells people I ruined my own wedding? She might. What if Nathan gets angry? Ask Nathan. He says he'll support whatever I decide. That surprised me less than it would have yesterday. Then this is yours. Claire inhaled slowly. Okay. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. That's all right. No. Her voice changed. Not louder. Firmer. I think I do. Before I could ask, she said I have to go. Claire, I love you. I love you too. The call ended. I stood with the phone in my hand. Then I did something I had avoided all day. I went upstairs. I put on the dress. Not because I had decided to go. Because I wanted to be ready if the answer became clear. I fastened the earrings Thomas had given me. I put on my shoes. Then I slipped his photograph into my purse. At the venue, something had happened. I learned the details later. The coordinator had called for the bridal party to line up. Nathan stood at the front with his best man. Guests settled. Music began softly. Claire stood inside the estate with her bouquet. She could see the ceremony lawn through the open doors. She could see Nathan. She could see Diane. And she could see my empty chair. The coordinator touched her arm. Ready. Claire looked down the aisle. Then she said no. The coordinator assumed she meant nerves. Take a breath. We can give you a minute. Claire shook her head. I need everyone to wait. Her maid of honor, Emily, stared at her. What's wrong? Claire looked at the empty chair again. I can't do this yet. Emily lowered her voice. Do you want Nathan? Yes. The coordinator hesitated. It's unconventional for him to see you now. Claire laughed once through her tears. I think we're past worrying about unconventional. Nathan came inside. When he saw her, he immediately knew something was wrong. Claire, I can't walk down there. His face went pale. Do you mean you don't want to marry me? No. She took his hand. I mean, I can't start our marriage pretending what happened with my mother is finished because everyone put on nice clothes. Nathan looked toward the ceremony lawn. Then back at her. What do you need? Claire whispered. Time. How much I don't know. He nodded. Then we take time. The coordinator looked nervous. There are almost 200 guests seated. Nathan turned toward her. They can wait. That was the moment Rachel later told me when Claire started crying. Not because the wedding was falling apart. Because for the first time, someone was not asking her to sacrifice the easiest person for the sake of the schedule. The coordinator announced a brief delay. Guests murmured. Phones came out. People whispered. Diane immediately stood. What is happening? Mark touched her arm. Sit down. This is humiliating. Sit down, Diane. She did. Maybe for the first time in her adult life, she realized the room would continue without obeying her anxiety. 5 minutes became 10. Then 15. At 3:51, my phone rang again. Claire, I answered. She was crying, but her voice was steady. Mom. I stopped the ceremony. I closed my eyes. Why? Because I looked at your chair. I waited. And I realized if I walked down that aisle without you, then all I would be doing is choosing appearances again. My eyes filled. You don't have to cancel your wedding for me. I'm not canceling it. What are you doing? Taking responsibility. I sat on the edge of the bed. Claire. No, please let me say this. I stayed quiet. She took a breath. I was afraid of the person who threatened me, so I punished the person who loved me. My hand flew to my mouth. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself you'd understand. I told myself that because you loved me, losing you for one day was safer than standing up to Diane. Her voice broke. But that is not love. That is using love as protection from consequences. Tears slid down my face. I'm sorry, Mom. I know. No, I need you to hear the whole thing. I'm listening. If you never come today, I will still marry Nathan eventually. Eventually. That word caught me. But I will not do it at 4 o'clock just because invitations say 4 o'clock. I closed my eyes. I won't stand there smiling for pictures while pretending the empty chair doesn't mean anything. Claire, there are guests waiting. I know. Food scheduled. I know. People who traveled. I know. Then think carefully. I have. Her voice became calm. If we have to postpone, we postpone. My heart clenched. No. She went silent. You should not cancel your life to prove you love me. I'm not. That is what this could become. Then tell me what to do. I stood. Stop asking me to decide your boundaries for you. The line became quiet. I don't understand. Yes, you do. I walked toward the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 68. Gray beginning to show more openly at my temples. Eyes swollen from crying. Champagne dress fitting exactly as it had in the store. A mother. A widow. A woman who had spent months being moved to the edges of her own daughter's life. Claire. Do you want Diane deciding who belongs at your wedding? Num. Do you want fear deciding no? Do you want me there? Yes. Then say that where it matters. There was a long pause. You mean publicly, I mean clearly. She understood. I heard it in her breathing. For months, Claire had whispered disagreement and publicly complied. If she truly wanted something different, the pattern had to change where everyone could see it. I can do that, she said. Good. Will that make you come? I smiled through my tears. This is not a transaction. I know. Do it because it is right. I will. We hung up. I picked up my purse. Then I sat again. I still did not leave. At the venue, Claire stepped out where the wedding party could see her. The coordinator asked whether she was ready. Claire said, not yet. Then she asked for a microphone. That caused enough concern that Nathan came beside her. Guests began turning. Diane stood again. Mark whispered something to her. This time she remained standing. Claire walked to the entrance of the aisle. Not down it. Just far enough that everyone could see her. According to Rachel, the entire lawn went quiet. Claire held the microphone with both hands. I'm sorry for the delay, she began. Her voice trembled. There is something I need to correct before Nathan and I get married. Diane's face changed. She knew. Claire continued. My mother was supposed to be sitting in that empty chair. Every head turned toward the front row. My chair. I asked her not to come. Whispers moved through the guests. Claire swallowed. I did it because I was trying to prevent conflict in our families. Diane started moving toward the aisle. Mark caught her hand. Claire kept speaking. I thought keeping the peace meant asking the person who loved me most to accept being hurt because I knew she would forgive me. The lawn went silent again. I was wrong. Rachel told me later that several women in the audience started crying. Claire's voice steadied. My mother did not create the conflict that led to her being excluded. Diane whispered loudly, Claire, stop. Claire heard her. Everyone did. My daughter looked directly toward her, and for the first time, she did not shrink. I'm not attacking anyone, she said. I'm taking responsibility for what I did. Nathan stepped beside her. Claire looked back at the guests. I cannot begin my marriage by pretending that silence is peace. Then she lowered the microphone. That was all. No public accusation about money, no humiliation, no details about Diane's debt. Just the truth Claire owned, her own part. And when she finished, she called me. My phone rang at 4:03. Mom, I'm here. I said it. I know. How Rachel texted me. For a second, Claire laughed through her tears. Of course she did. Then her voice softened. We're waiting. My heart began pounding. Claire, I'm not asking you to hurry. Silence. We will wait if you come, and if you decide not to, I will understand. That was it. The sentence I needed. Not please fix this. Not everybody is waiting. Not think of the guests. Just, I will understand. For the first time, my daughter had given me the same freedom she had always expected from me. I picked up Thomas's photograph. Then my car keys. I'm leaving now. Claire gasped. Mom, I said I'm leaving. She started crying. So you're coming? I smiled. Sweetheart, I promised I would not attend the wedding you asked me to disappear from. She went quiet. And I intend to keep that promise. What does that mean? I walked toward the front door. It means if I come, we are not having that wedding. There was silence. Then Claire understood. The wedding changed. Yes. A soft laugh came through the phone. Yes, Mom. It did. I opened the door. Then I'll see you soon. And for the first time all day, I stepped outside. Not because my daughter had begged me to rescue her wedding. Not because Diane had been defeated. Not because the guests were waiting. I went because the wedding I had agreed to miss no longer existed. The performance was over. The fear had been named. My daughter had finally stopped keeping the wrong kind of peace. Now there was only one thing left to do. Walk back into her life on terms neither of us would ever forget. The drive to the venue took 23 minutes. I remember because I watched every one of them pass on the dashboard clock. 4:07, 4:10, 4:14. The roads through Richmond looked completely ordinary. People walked dogs. A man loaded groceries into the trunk of his car. Two teenagers crossed an intersection carrying iced coffees. Nobody knew that my daughter's wedding had stopped 20 minutes earlier because the bride had looked at an empty chair and decided she could no longer pretend it meant nothing. I drove with both hands tight on the steering wheel. Thomas's photograph rested in my purse on the passenger seat. At one red light, I glanced at it. "You'd better be with me on this one," I whispered. The light changed. I kept driving. When I turned onto the long road leading toward the estate, I expected panic. Cars leaving, guests wandering around. Maybe even an ambulance, because weddings had taught me never to underestimate what could go wrong. Instead, everything looked strangely calm. The parking lot was full. The gardens were still beautiful. Music drifted faintly from the ceremony lawn. But nobody was getting married. Not yet. Rachel was waiting near the side entrance. The second she saw my car, she started walking toward me. I parked and stepped out. She looked at my dress, then at my face. "You came." I did. She hugged me hard. For a moment I let myself hold on. Then I asked, "How bad is it? Better than you think?" Diane's still here. Claire waiting inside. Nathan with her. Guests confused, hungry, and probably thrilled to have something to gossip about for the next 10 years. I laughed. The tension broke just enough for me to breathe. Rachel took my hand. "Eva, before you go in, I want you to know something." What Claire did well. My eyes filled. I heard. "No." "You heard what she said?" Rachel squeezed my hand. "You didn't see her say it." I swallowed. She looked terrified. And she did it anyway. That mattered more than I could explain. Courage is not the absence of fear. At 68, I had finally learned that. Courage is deciding fear no longer gets the final vote. I started toward the building. Rachel stopped me. "The coordinator wants to know whether you're ready to go directly to the bridal suite." "No." She frowned. "No, I want to see Claire outside." "Why?" "Because before I walk into that wedding, I need to know she understands what we're doing." Rachel studied me for a second, then nodded. "I'll get her." I walked toward a small stone terrace behind the estate. It was quieter there. Beyond the railing, the James River moved slowly beneath the late afternoon light. I had designed 3 weddings on that terrace years earlier. One bride had cried because it rained. Another had cried because it stopped raining. People imagine wedding professionals become cynical. I never did. After hundreds of ceremonies, I still believed there was something sacred about 2 people promising to build a life together. But I also knew a beautiful ceremony could not repair a bad foundation. You had to build that afterward, one choice at a time. The door behind me opened. I turned. Claire stood there. For a second, I forgot everything. The bills, the threats, Diane, the empty chair, all of it. I saw my little girl. She wore a simple ivory gown with a fitted bodice and soft sleeves. Her hair was pinned loosely at the back, and my mother's pearl earrings caught the light. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She had never looked more beautiful to me. "Mom." That was all she managed. I crossed the terrace. She reached me halfway. We held each other. No speeches, no explanations, just my daughter in my arms. I felt her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know. I'm so sorry. I know." After a while, I pulled back and looked at her. "Let me see you." She laughed through tears. "My makeup is ruined. You have an entire bridal team inside. You'll survive." She touched my dress. "You wore it." "Yes. I hated asking you to change from the navy one." "I know. I should have said no." "Yes." She smiled sadly. "You're not going to let me pretend I wasn't terrible today, are you?" "No." "Good." That answer surprised both of us. Claire took a breath. "So, what happens now?" I looked toward the ceremony lawn. "You tell me." She frowned. "I thought you had a plan." "I had a principle." "What principle?" "I'm not attending the wedding you asked me to disappear from." Her face fell slightly. Mom? I thought I held up my hand. Let me finish. She waited. That wedding was built around Diane's expectations. I pointed toward the building. The oversized guest list. The upgrades. The fear. The constant concern about what people would think. And finally the idea that your own mother could be removed because one person threatened to cause trouble. Claire looked down. I know. You said you wanted something different. I do. Then do not put me back into the same wedding and call it fixed. She looked at me. What do you want me to change? Nothing for me. I don't understand. I'm not asking for a special announcement. I'm not asking Diane to apologize publicly. I'm not asking anyone to be humiliated. Then what I want you to have the wedding you actually chose. Her eyes filled again. The original one, as much as possible. Claire glanced toward the lawn. We already removed most of the extras. I heard. Nathan cut the guest additions we could reasonably cut. I heard that too. We're using the standard chairs. Your grandchildren may one day recover from the scandal. She laughed. A real laugh this time. I smiled. Claire, look at me. She did. Do you want me there because you are afraid of hurting me again? No. Because people now know what happened? No. Because having an empty chair looks bad? No. Then why? She did not hesitate. Because you're my mother. My throat tightened. And because I love you. I waited. And because I want you beside me even if somebody else doesn't like it. There. That was the difference. I nodded. Then I'll come. Claire covered her mouth. Tears started again. Oh, thank God. Stop crying. You're going to scare the photographer. She laughed again. Then she surprised me. Will you walk me down the aisle? I stared at her. For years, Claire had talked about how hard that part of the wedding would be without Thomas. The original plan had been for her to walk alone. Not because she had nobody else. Because she said she wanted to honor her father. Sweetheart, I know Dad was supposed to. He would have loved to. I know. She took my hands. But you were there for every day after he couldn't be. I could no longer stop the tears. Claire continued. I don't want to walk alone anymore. I opened my purse. What are you doing? I took out Thomas's photograph. Claire gasped. You brought him. Of course I did. She took the photograph carefully. For a moment both of us looked at him. Then Claire smiled through her tears. Then all three of us can do it. I nodded. Yes. The coordinator found us 10 minutes later. She looked as if she had aged 5 years since breakfast. Mrs. Butler. Eva, please. She smiled weakly. Eva. We can begin whenever you're ready. I turned to Claire. This is your call. Claire nodded. Let's do it. We went back inside. Nathan was standing near the bridal suite. When he saw me, relief flooded his face. Eva. I walked toward him. He hugged me. It surprised me. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here too. He stepped back. I'm sorry. I know. No, I need to say it one more time. I waited. I watched my mother disrespect you because confronting her was uncomfortable. His voice was steady, and that helped create the situation where Claire believed she had to choose. I nodded. Yes, I won't do that again. I hope not. He gave a small smile. That's fair. Then he noticed the photograph Claire was holding. His expression softened. You're walking together. Claire nodded. Mom and Dad. Nathan looked at me. I think that's perfect. We still had one conversation left. Diane. I did not seek her out. I had no desire for a dramatic confrontation. But as the wedding party began reorganizing, she appeared near the hallway. She was still perfectly dressed. Pearls, pale lavender suit, hair untouched. But something about her seemed smaller. Not physically, socially. The certainty had disappeared. She approached us carefully. Eva, Diane. For a moment nobody spoke. Then she said, I suppose you got what you wanted. Claire stiffened. Nathan started to speak. I touched his arm. No. I looked at Diane. What do you think I wanted? She glanced toward the ceremony lawn. Everyone turning against me. I shook my head. I wanted to attend my daughter's wedding. Her face tightened. Well, now you are. Yes. No need to make a victory speech. I wasn't planning one. That seemed to confuse her. Perhaps she had imagined I wanted revenge, because revenge was easier to understand than boundaries. She looked at Claire. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Claire swallowed. I watched her. This was another test. Not mine. Hers. Claire said I told everyone what I did. You made it obvious I was responsible. I didn't discuss the money. I didn't discuss your debts. I didn't tell anyone what you said about Mom. Diane's lips tightened. You didn't have to. Claire breathed slowly. No, I didn't. Diane stared at her. Then she said, You would really have postponed your wedding over this? Yes. The answer came immediately. Something changed in Diane's face. For the first time, the threat of leaving had no power. Claire had already proven she was willing to stop the entire event rather than obey it. Diane looked at Nathan. And you, I would have waited. Her eyes moved toward Mark. He stood several feet away. And you, Mark answered calmly. I would have supported them. Diane was surrounded by people she loved. Nobody was screaming. Nobody was insulting her. Nobody was throwing her out. They were simply no longer moving when she pushed. I think that frightened her more than anger would have. She turned toward me. You must be enjoying this. No. She studied my face. I think she finally believed me. This is my daughter's wedding, I said. I want her to remember it with joy. Diane looked down. I continued. You can still be part of that. Her eyes rose. But only if you stop trying to own it. She flinched. I did not expect an apology. And she did not give one. Not then. Instead, she asked, Where am I supposed to sit? The question was so ordinary that I almost smiled. With Mark. Front row. She looked surprised. I could have asked Claire to move her. Nobody would have blamed us. But that was not what this was about. Consequences did not require cruelty. Diane nodded once. Then she walked toward the lawn. The coordinator looked at us. Ready? Claire wiped her cheeks carefully. Yes. The bridal party began moving. Music started again. Guests stood. From inside the doorway, I could see the ceremony space. The flowers were simple. The chairs matched. The river shimmered behind the arbor. Nothing looked cheap. Nothing looked ruined. It looked like Claire. Then I saw my chair. Still empty. Waiting. Claire slipped her arm through mine. In her other hand, tucked against her bouquet, she held Thomas's photograph. You okay? She whispered. No. She looked alarmed. I smiled. I'm better than okay. She laughed softly. The doors opened wider. Everyone turned. I saw Rachel crying immediately. Mark smiled. Nathan stood at the front with tears already in his eyes. And Diane looked at us. Her expression was impossible to read. But she stayed seated. She did not leave. She did not make a scene. She simply watched as the woman she had tried to push out walked openly down the center aisle. I held Claire's arm. Claire held Thomas's photograph. Halfway down, she whispered, Mom, yes, I'm glad we changed the wedding. So am I. When we reached Nathan, he took Claire's hand. Then he looked at me. Thank you. I kissed my daughter's cheek. This time I whispered to her, Choose the life you want. She nodded. I walked to the front row and sat down, in my chair. Not because anyone had finally permitted me to be there. Because my daughter had chosen publicly that I belonged. The ceremony itself lasted 22 minutes. No dramatic interruptions. No final confrontation. No one stormed away. Claire and Nathan exchanged vows. They promised honesty, patience, partnership. When Nathan said I promised not to let fear make my choices for me, Claire squeezed his hands. I knew that sentence had not been in the original vows. When Claire said I promised to speak truth even when silence feels easier, I knew hers had changed too. I cried. So did Mark. Even Diane looked down for a long moment. When they were pronounced husband and wife, everyone stood. The applause was loud, not because the wedding was extravagant, because it had survived becoming honest. At the reception, nobody complained about the missing orchids. Nobody asked where the lounge furniture was. Nobody mourned the luxury cars. People ate, they danced, they laughed, they celebrated. Exactly what weddings are supposed to be. Late in the evening, Claire found me near the edge of the dance floor. Mom. Yes, I think you kept your promise. I smiled. What promise you didn't come to the wedding I asked you to stay away from? I looked around the room. The simpler flowers. The people who actually mattered. Nathan laughing with Mark. Diane sitting quietly with a glass of water. Rachel dancing terribly with one of Nathan's uncles. No, I said. I didn't. Claire rested her head briefly against my shoulder. That wedding never happened. No. She smiled. This one did. And for the first time since she had asked me to disappear, I felt the hurt loosen its grip on me. Not vanish. Some wounds do not disappear in one afternoon, but they can begin healing. My daughter had not saved our relationship by inviting me back. She had saved it by understanding why she had pushed me out, and I had not protected her by quietly paying for everyone's mistakes. I had protected something more important. The possibility that all of us could finally stop pretending love meant surrender. The strangest thing about the weeks after Claire's wedding was how quiet everything became. For months, every conversation had felt urgent. Venues, invoices, Diane, guests, money, who was offended, who might leave, who needed to be calmed down. Then suddenly the wedding was over. The flowers were gone. The dress was boxed. The photographs were being edited. And all of us were left with the things that could not be packed away. Claire called me the morning after the wedding. I let it ring twice before answering. Not to punish her. I simply needed a second to remember that I was no longer responsible for making every difficult feeling disappear immediately. Hi, sweetheart. Her voice was soft. Did I wake you? No. That was a lie. You sound tired. I attended a wedding yesterday. She laughed. For a moment we sounded like ourselves again. Then silence settled between us. Finally Claire said, I keep thinking about everything. So do I. I don't know how to act normal with you. I sat up in bed. Then don't. What don't act normal? She went quiet. We're not back to normal yet, I said, and pretending we are would just be another version of what got us into trouble. I don't want that. Neither do I. Claire inhaled slowly. Are you still angry? Yes. The answer came more easily than I expected. She was silent. I continued. And I still love you. I know. Both can be true. That became the beginning of how we rebuilt. Slowly. Not with one dramatic apology. Not with a perfect mother-daughter lunch where we cried into our salads and promised never to hurt each other again. Real repair was much less cinematic. Sometimes Claire called and I did not answer immediately because I was busy. Before the wedding, she might have interpreted that as anger. Afterwards, she learned not to panic. Sometimes she asked for help and I said no. Not because I wanted to teach her a lesson, because I actually had other plans. The first time it happened, she paused. Then she said, Okay, Mom, no problem. I almost laughed afterward. Such a small thing, yet it felt enormous. Claire also began seeing a counselor. She told me about it 3 weeks after the wedding. We were having coffee at a little cafe near my house. I think I've been conflict avoidant my entire life, she said. I smiled. I could have told you that for free. She laughed. I know. Then she became serious. My therapist asked me why I think someone being angry means I did something wrong. That question stayed with me too. Claire had spent years measuring the correctness of her decisions by whether everyone remained pleased with her. Diane had been especially effective at exploiting that. But Claire also admitted something harder. I did it with you because I knew your anger wouldn't cost me your love. I stirred my coffee. That's true. I think I took advantage of that. Yes. She nodded. No argument, no defense, progress. Nathan changed too, not overnight, but noticeably. The first real test came only 2 weeks after the wedding. Diane invited them to Sunday dinner. Halfway through the meal, she began criticizing Claire for airing private family matters during the ceremony delay. Nathan stopped her. Not angrily, just clearly. Mom, we're not doing this. Diane apparently stared at him as if he had spoken another language, rewriting what happened. Claire told me later that her instinct had been to change the subject. Nathan's instinct had once been exactly the same. This time neither of them did. He said Claire took responsibility for her decision. She didn't tell the guests about your finances. She didn't humiliate you. If you felt exposed, that came from knowing why the situation happened. Diane left the table. Months earlier, Nathan would have followed her. That day, he stayed seated. She came back 10 minutes later. Nobody apologized for making her angry. That was new. Mark made changes too. He separated several household accounts immediately after discovering the credit card debt. Not as punishment, protection. He froze access to certain joint funds until he understood exactly what Diane owed. He insisted they meet with a financial counselor. Diane resisted at first. She accused him of treating her like a child. Mark told her, "I treated you like a partner. You hid debt from me. Partnership has to be rebuilt." When Claire repeated that sentence to me, I thought of my marriage to Thomas. He would have liked Mark more after hearing it. Mark did not file for divorce. That surprised some people. It did not surprise me. A bad act does not always mean a relationship should end. Sometimes it means the relationship has finally reached the point where pretending must end. Mark loved his wife, but for the first time in years, he stopped confusing love with protection from consequences. Diane began counseling with him 2 months later. I did not ask for details. Their marriage belonged to them. My relationship with Diane was different. For nearly 4 months after the wedding, we did not speak directly. I saw her twice at family gatherings. Both times we were polite. "Hello, Eva." "Hello, Diane." No speeches, no reconciliation hugs, no staged photographs, proving everything was fine. I preferred that. Forgiveness should not be performed for an audience. Then one Tuesday afternoon in November, I found an envelope in my mailbox. My name was written on the front. Not typed, handwritten. Inside was a letter from Diane. 3 pages. I stood in the kitchen and read it. She did not excuse herself. That was what surprised me most. She wrote that she had spent years convincing herself that appearances were a kind of security. If people believed she was successful, connected, comfortable, then she could believe it too. When the spending grew beyond what she could manage, she hid it. When the wedding became another opportunity to display the life she wanted people to see, she kept adding to it. Then she wrote about me. She admitted she had looked down on my modest house, my car, my clothes, and my work, because she had mistaken visible spending for success. She wrote, "I told myself that because you had more money than I expected, it was harmless to assume you could carry expenses temporarily. That was not harmless. It was entitlement." I had to stop reading for a moment. Then I continued. She admitted telling vendors that I was forgetful. She admitted using an electronic version of my name on the authorization because she believed the charges would be paid before anyone cared. She did not call it a misunderstanding. She called it wrong. At the end, she wrote, "I am not asking you to trust me. I understand that trust is not something I can request. I only wanted to tell you that I know I treated your kindness as weakness, and I was wrong." I read that sentence 3 times. Then I folded the letter. I did not call her. Not that day. I wasn't ready. A week later, I sent a short reply. I told her I accepted the apology. I also told her acceptance did not restore trust. She responded with only 3 words. "I understand that." And to her credit, she behaved as though she did. The business side took longer to clean up. Rachel and I met with our attorney. Because the vendors had cooperated and the disputed authorizations had been corrected before final charges were processed. Butler Event Design did not suffer the financial damage it could have. Mark and Diane paid the legitimate upgrades they chose to keep. The canceled extras disappeared from the final bills. My original $25,000 gift remained exactly what I had promised. Not $1 more. Not $1 less. That mattered to me. I had not withdrawn my love because I was hurt. I had simply stopped allowing my love to be expanded into obligations I never agreed to. 6 months after the wedding, Claire came to my house carrying a large white box. "What's that?" I asked. "The album." We made tea and sat together on the living room sofa. The photographer had done beautiful work. There was Claire getting ready, Nathan with his father, the simple flowers, the ceremony, the first dance, Rachel laughing with her head thrown back. Even Diane appeared in several photographs, quieter than usual, but present. Then we reached one photograph that made both of us stop. It had been taken outside the venue before the ceremony restarted. Claire and I stood together on the stone terrace. Neither of us was looking at the camera. She was holding my hands. Thomas's photograph was visible between us. I remembered the exact moment. Claire had just asked me to walk her down the aisle. The photographer must have been standing somewhere behind the doorway. I touched the page. I didn't know he took this. Neither did I. Claire smiled. Then she pointed beneath the photograph. There was a small line of handwriting. Her handwriting. The moment I stopped keeping the wrong kind of peace, I stared at it, my eyes filled. Claire looked nervous. Too much no. I touched the words again. It's exactly right. She leaned against me. For a while we turned pages without speaking. Then she asked, "Do you regret it?" What the way everything happened? I thought carefully. I regret that it had to happen. That isn't the same answer. No. She waited. I regret the pain. I looked at her. I regret that you were frightened. I regret what Diane did. I regret all the months I stayed quiet because I thought silence was helping you. Claire nodded. But do I regret stepping away when you asked me to disappear? I shook my head. No. She looked down. I don't either. That surprised me. You don't? If you had just come anyway, I would have told myself you were causing conflict. Probably true. If you had paid everything and stayed home, I might never have learned what Diane was doing. Also true. And if you had immediately forgiven me and rushed back when I called. She paused. I might have learned that I could hurt you badly and fix it with an apology. I stared at my daughter. She had changed. Not into someone fearless. That wasn't necessary. She had become someone who could recognize fear without automatically obeying it. That's quite an expensive lesson, I said. Claire laughed. At least we saved money on the orchids. I laughed so loudly I nearly spilled my tea. Thomas would have loved that joke. A year after the wedding, Claire and Nathan invited both families to dinner at their house. Nothing fancy. Lasagna, salad, a grocery store cake because Claire forgot to order dessert. Diane came. So did Mark. Rachel came too. At one point, Diane offered to help Claire rearrange the table because she thought the centerpiece was too tall. Claire looked at her. Mom, the centerpiece is staying. Diane opened her mouth, then stopped. All right, that was it. No crisis, no threat, no one left. I caught Claire's eye across the table. She smiled. So did I. Peace. Real peace. Not silence purchased by the most accommodating person in the room. Not one woman shrinking so another would remain comfortable. Not love measured by how much pain someone could absorb without complaining. Just people learning where one person ended and another began. That evening after everyone left, Claire walked me to my car. She hugged me. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Then she smiled. And if I ever ask you to skip another wedding, I raised an eyebrow. Another wedding, she laughed. You know what I mean. I certainly hope I don't. She squeezed my hand. Thank you for not disappearing. I looked at my daughter. I almost did. I know. No, sweetheart. I mean before the wedding. She frowned. For months I kept making myself smaller because I thought that was what love required. Her expression softened. And I finally learned something. What I smiled. You can love someone with your whole heart without handing them the right to erase you. Claire's eyes filled. She nodded. Then I got into my car and drove home. And for the first time in a very long while, I felt no need to wonder whether everyone was happy with me. I knew who I was. I knew what I had given. I knew where my boundaries were. And I knew something else too. The people who truly love you may not always like your boundaries. They may stumble against them. They may even resent them at first. But healthy love eventually learns to respect the place where you stand. Because peace that requires one person to disappear was never peace at all. It was surrender. And I was finally done, surrendering. Kethuk Fan 15. There is something many women learn far too late in life. We are often praised for how much we can endure, for being patient, for being understanding, for keeping families together, for smoothing over awkward moments, for giving quickly, helping financially, and saying, "It's all right even when it isn't." For years, I thought that was what being a good mother meant. I thought love meant being the strongest person in the room so everyone else could lean on me. But strength without boundaries can become an invitation. People begin assuming you will absorb one more insult because you survived the last one more expense because you can afford it, one more compromise because you are reasonable, one more heartbreak because you are the person least likely to leave. That is not peace, and it is not healthy love. A boundary is not revenge. Saying no does not mean you stopped caring. Refusing to rescue another adult from the consequences of their own choices does not make you cruel. Sometimes consequences are exactly what finally allows people to grow. Claire needed to understand that avoiding conflict could still hurt someone. Nathan needed to understand that staying neutral while his mother controlled everyone was itself a choice. Diane needed to learn that money, appearances, and social status could never excuse dishonesty. And I needed to learn that being a loving mother did not require becoming invisible. Forgiveness mattered, but forgiveness did not mean pretending nothing happened. Trust had to be rebuilt, respect had to become mutual, and healing came slowly through different choices made over time. Maybe that is what real family love looks like. Not perfection, accountability, not endless sacrifice, mutual respect, not keeping the peace at any cost, building a peace in which everyone is allowed to exist. If your own daughter had asked you to miss her wedding just to keep someone else happy, what would you have done? Would you have stayed home, gone anyway, or handled it differently? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. And if this story reminded you that your dignity still matters, no matter your age, no matter your role in the family, please like the video and subscribe for more emotional family stories about betrayal, courage, boundaries, and finding your way back to yourself. What happened between Claire and me taught me something I wish I had understood years earlier. Love is not measured by how much pain you are willing to silently absorb. For a long time, I believed being a good mother meant being the one who stayed calm, forgave, quickly solved problems, and made sacrifices so everyone else could feel comfortable. I thought strength meant enduring more. I thought maturity meant avoiding conflict. But sometimes when you are always the person willing to bend, people stop seeing your kindness as a gift and begin treating it like an obligation. That is where love can become dangerous. Not because love itself is wrong, but because love without boundaries can teach people that hurting you has no real cost. Claire did love me. That was never the question. But fear made her choose the person most likely to create chaos, while asking the person least likely to abandon her to carry the pain. And I had helped create that pattern by always saying yes, always smoothing things over, always convincing myself that keeping the family together mattered more than admitting I was hurt. Eventually, I understood that peace built on one person's silence is not peace. It is surrender. Real peace requires honesty. It requires accountability. It allows people to say, "I love you," but this is not acceptable. It allows forgiveness without pretending the wound never existed. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop protecting them from the consequences that might finally help them grow. Growing older does not mean becoming easier to ignore. Being a mother does not mean becoming invisible. And having a generous heart does not mean everyone else gets unlimited access to your time, your money, your energy, or your dignity. You can love your family deeply and still say no. You can forgive and still remember the lesson. You can choose peace without sacrificing yourself to create it. And sometimes the moment you stop disappearing for everyone else is the moment the people who truly love you finally learn how to see you. If this story touched something personal in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been asked